Good afternoon. It's 1:30 and I will call this meeting to order. We are glad you are here. We have a big topic to discuss. We had a meeting this morning and we had the Pledge of Allegiance this morning, but can you have too many pledges? I don't think so. I'm wondering, Mr. Nielsen, Eric Nielsen, Town Manager of Gardnerville, would you lead us in the pledge?
Way back here, sure. All right, please join with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are a few, first thing we'll do is ask for general public comment. This is public comment for matters that are not on our agenda today, and we will limit those to 3 minutes. You will know you have 30 seconds left when you hear a beep and the yellow light goes on, and you are out of time when the red light goes on. And I will now call for this is for matters not on today's agenda. For matters regarding roads, I'll explain how we're going to cover that. So is there any public comment for matters not having to do with roads? Seeing none? Okay, come on up to the podium. It's on that corner over there.
Do I have to introduce myself?
Yes, please state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Shyam Patel. I reside at the Topaz Lake, and I've been asking to put the street lights up there at the Sandy Bower or Topaz Ranch Estate intersection. For ages, I've been telling the county, my commissioners, everybody else, but nothing has been done. I was assured that it will be put into planning for the next time, but they put at the Holbrook Junction, but not at the junction of Sandy Bowers and Topaz Ranch Estates. No, Topaz Road, Park Road, I'm sorry. It's from 395 to Topaz Road, Park Road. And that's all I care.
Okay, thank you. You happen to be in Commissioner Gardner's district, so maybe he can follow up with you. Okay.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out where it is. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we may not have jurisdiction over that. That may be NDOT.
So
Okay, so that's the difficulty with it.
right. So if you could just leave your name and phone number, maybe with the county manager. If you're going to stay around, then we'll connect on break. But otherwise, leave your name and phone number with the county manager.
Yep.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Jim Jackson. I was watching your meeting this morning, and I wanted to thank Commissioner Gardner for his concern that some of us older ones have trouble understanding the elections, how the machines work, and some of the budget numbers and how they work. So thank you for your understanding that us older guys can't understand. One of the comments that was made as we were going through the line items was that they didn't want to go through every single item because the comment was we'd want to do them all if you did that. Well, you do a pretty good job of spending our money, so I'm glad you didn't go through all of them, because there were several of them in there that I thought you don't need to spend money on. We're anxious to see what you say about the roads today, and that's why you got a pretty good turnout here. So anyway, thank you for your concern this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Is Is there any other public comment not on roads? Okay, then I will close general public comment. I'll turn to approval of agenda. Is there a motion? Commissioner Tolbert?
I move we approve the agenda.
It's been moved by Commissioner Tolbert, seconded by Commissioner Tarkanian. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. With that, we are at our one administrative agenda item. Before I read it into the record, I have a few preliminary comments. This topic has been kicked down the road, so to speak, several times over several years. And there has been some good work done quite a while ago. But I do appreciate the courage, the responsibility, and the accountability of our county staff to pick this up and take a good hard look at the reality of our situation and to discuss with the public what do we have, what should be done, what can be done. And I know every member of this board is anxious to hear from the public. This will actually be a less formal meeting than we usually have. So we will have, we'll take some breaks over the duration of this meeting. And in addition to public comment, before we take any action, we will also have a question and answer time. So if you have questions as we go along through the presentation, please make sure to note them. And if they're not answered by the time we get towards the end of the meeting, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. And of course, there will be an opportunity for public comment. I also wanted to note as a preliminary matter that the discussion today is not going to focus on looking at the general fund or other places in our budget where we might be able to try and scrape together some funds for roads. And the reason that's not the focus of today's meeting is because we just had 4 full-day meetings of budget hearings and then another meeting this morning on budget update. So we've looked all over the budget and we've heard reports, we've scrutinized, we know what's in the budget. And we know that there is not money that can be taken that won't be a cut from some other service that's being provided. That is not to say we don't welcome your thoughts on where to take money. I'm just explaining that it's not going to be a focus of today's presentation. All right, with those preliminary pieces, I will turn to the agenda item, which reads, for possible action, discussion regarding Douglas County roads, including an overview of regional and local roads maintained and not maintained by the county, the current condition of county-maintained roads, the total amount of annual funding currently allocated for road operations and maintenance, as well as funding sources and potential mechanisms to increase funding for the construction and maintenance of roads and road-related transportation infrastructure projects. We have here to present today our County Manager, Jennifer Davidson. We have our Director of Public Works, Phil Ricker, and we have our Transportation Engineering Manager, John Erb. And we'll turn it to you.
Is this work? Oh, it is working. Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Davidson. I am your county manager, and it is my privilege to present with staff today on roads. If we can have you guys stand up, turn around. Yeah, we're going to do something a little bit less formal. Not the audience, sorry, staff. You guys are ready to participate in this conversation. Thank you so much. I meant my team, if we can just take this opportunity to introduce ourselves. We will, and I apologize for the awkwardness of the setup in this room. Our backs are to you while we're talking, but we will take some opportunities to engage with you throughout the presentation. So I do also want to take an opportunity to hand the mic to these two individuals and let them introduce themselves and have them look you in the eye before we get started. So go ahead.
Phil Ritker, Director of Public Works. I've been with the county now 6 years.
Awesome. And background on me, I've been with the county for 17 years, and Mr. Erb, our transportation engineer, is going to introduce himself in a minute, and he'll tell you how long he's been dealing with roads. 1 second.
Good afternoon, John Erb. I'm the transportation engineering manager. I head up the RTC and as well as the road maintenance division. I've been doing engineering and transportation now for 36 years. So it's been a long career. This is not unique to just Douglas County. In my career, both private and on the public side, it's an issue all around the nation. So with that, I'll go back to the county manager.
Awesome. And while these two take their seat, I'm just going to give some preliminary comments. This presentation is intended to be very comprehensive. I appreciate that your time is valuable. We wanted to make sure that the content we included in this presentation gave as much context for this discussion as possible for our community. We have 100 slides to go through, folks. It's a lot of information. This is a complex issue. It is not a problem we're going to solve today, but in order to have this conversation in a meaningful way, we need to go through this information. So I appreciate your patience. As Commissioner Hales indicated, we will take breaks. There will be interactive portions of this presentation in which we ask you to weigh in on the conversation. We want your opinion. In addition, at the end of the meeting, we will take your questions. We will take public comment, and then staff additionally are planning to hang out afterwards in case you want to have one-on-one conversations with any of us or you have additional questions that you were reluctant to ask in a public setting. I know this microphone can be pretty intimidating. So with that, I will just also add that through our social media engagement with the public, we received a number of questions submitted in advance of this meeting. To the best of our ability, we did attempt to answer those questions in the presentation, which is another reason why we have 100 slides. We have a community that has a lot of questions regarding roads, and so we have a bunch of information for you today. So thank you for that, and with that, Madam Chair, we'll get started. All right. Our workshop agenda for today is we're going to go through the purpose of this workshop. We're going to provide the commission with and the public with an overview of the road infrastructure that the county currently maintains and the condition of said infrastructure. We'll then break into a overview of the funding that the county currently receives to maintain and repair roads. We will also provide an overview of what other jurisdictions in the region are doing, how much roads they maintain, and the funding sources that they use. We will also provide you with an overview of the history of the Road Task Force and the recommendations and funding discussion that task force had. We will also provide you with future considerations and final takeaways, and then we will leave some time at the end for questions. I do anticipate, Madam Chair, that that the commission may have questions throughout this presentation, and with your permission, staff would be open to answering those.
Yes, so commissioners, if you have questions during the presentation, let's ask them as we move through.
All right, so our purpose for today is to build a shared understanding regarding the roads issues that is facing the county, to highlight the needs of this community, to support informed decision-making for this county commission, and to shape the future of Douglas County together in an interactive, collaborative way with the public. Our challenges, very briefly described on one slide and summarized. Road maintenance of existing infrastructure continues to be an ongoing challenge for this organization. The cost of maintaining and replacing the critical infrastructure, road infrastructure, that every resident in this community and visitors to our community use is a daunting prospect and is continuing to rise. Funding sources are limited, and balancing the needs with our budgetary constraints is a complex task. The decisions we're making today and the conversations today are very much going to have an impact on the quality of life for our residents, and we recognize that. Our objective as we discuss this problem should be well-maintained, sustainably funded roads. Throughout this presentation, I mentioned we will ask interactive questions of the audience in this room, but additionally, we're going to do it in a way that will allow for participation of individuals who are watching this live streaming online, and we will capture that feedback as part of the record today, and it will continue to help the board in making your decision. The intent of engaging with our public is to, again, highlight the needs of our community and to shape the future of the decisions that we're making collaboratively with our residents. All right, so this is interactive question number 1. So how we're going to do these interactive questions, give me just one moment. I'm gonna pull up Mentimeter. Mentimeter is an online application that allows for live participation. So for individuals in the audience today, you can pull out your phone, and for those following along online, if you have a computer, you can pull up menti.com and you can use this code on the screen. For individuals in the audience today, if you pull out your phone, you can hit your camera button. If you hit the camera button, it'll show you a link. You click on that link and it'll take you direct to the survey that we're about to ask you. If anyone in the audience needs assistance, I have some representatives from my staff. They'd be happy to help you and walk you through this. But also to show you what this looks like on your phone, let me go here and give you a little bit of a preview. Once you get to the right location, it's gonna look like this. On your phone, it'll say you're all set and that you're waiting on me. Anyone need assistance in the audience?
It looks like everybody's processing this, so maybe just give it a minute.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to close this guy, pull this guy back up. I'll give it one more minute for everyone to get to the right screen, and then I'm going to go to the next slide that's going to ask our first set of questions. All right. Here we go.
Does anyone still need that scan? Yeah, we do. Someone still needs, we need the scan one more time.
You got it, Phil? So Phil's going to walk back to that individual, and the rest of us are going to...
On the right.
Yep. Okay.
You know, the thing I don't think that we've addressed with our public is that the commissioners need this information just as much as the public does. We have not been exposed to this information before. The public has just recently when this agenda was published. So we're going to participate also. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So the question you're being asked as you navigate your way to this survey is, how strongly do you agree or disagree with the following statements? The first statement is, our objective should be well-maintained, sustainably funded roads. You're being asked to select on a range from 1 to 5 in accordance with how strongly you agree or disagree with these statements. 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree, and the numbers in between are somewhere in the middle. The next statement is, we are not meeting our road maintenance goals. And the third is, additional road funding is needed.
still on it.
No, I'm,
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll give it one more minute, and I apologize. Thank you, everyone, for your patience with technology. It looks like we have 24 people who have responded so far.
Says the 20. These are the numbers of people. 4.5. Was it point?
Because it's an average. We're going to be pros at this by the time we're all done. It's a little bit of a learning curve at first, so as we get through more and more questions, we'll be able to move much more quickly. I apologize. Also, I will just add, we're intending to have a survey available after the workshop, and we'll make it available to the public for a period of time after this workshop. So if someone's not able to answer these questions today, we can work with them to obtain the data, and we can share that with the commission as part of the public record at a later time once we close the survey for the public.
it looks like most people are with you.
Okay. All right. So it looks like we've had 30 people respond so far, and on average, most are strongly agreeing with all three statements. There's some variability. It looks like we're dropping a little bit and we are not meeting our road maintenance goals. That's probably the lowest scoring in terms of how strongly we feel or agree with these statements. Okay. Going back to our presentation. Now we're going to dive into our road infrastructure overview. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Erb.
Thank you, Jennifer. So this is an overview of our road infrastructure and what the county maintains and does not maintain. The county has on paved roads 189 miles of paved roads that we maintain. And then there's 43 miles of grinding roads, almost 10 miles of gravel roads that we maintain. And then throughout the county, there's 189 miles of roads that we do not maintain. And those are because of various reasons, either that they were never built to a standard, there's no right-of-way, they're just an easement. There's different reasons the board may have not accepted it for various reasons.
Mr. Erb, could I ask you, you have 189, but you don't, how many are paved? How many are grinding and how many are gravel? Because you can see some roads that you're not maintaining, maybe dirt roads, but I mean, which ones are the ones that are paved? And then, I mean, it'd be nice if we knew which ones are paved and within a community of a significant number of residents.
For the public roads that are not accepted for maintenance, it's a variety. The majority of them would be probably gravel roads that are outside in the very rural areas of the county. But there are roads that have been paved that the county never accepted for maintenance. And then
Into the residents, because that has always stunned me when I hear that terminology. What kind of a road would not be accepted for maintenance? And you mentioned that the ones were not built to the standard, the county standard. Well, why was the county allowing the road to be built not to its standard?
so some of these roads have been there for 5 or 6 decades. So why they were never accepted, I don't have all that information. But there were developers that required in the past that parceled their property that couldn't afford to build it to a standard, and they may have gotten a variance. That could have been of one reason, and with the granting of the variance, the county said, we'll give you the variance, but we're not going to maintain the road at that time. So that's a possibility of why, but I don't have all the commissioner details throughout all the decades of like why roads were accepted or why they're not accepted.
As a follow-up, if someone buys a residence or property on a road that's not maintained, are they given notice somewhere in that process that this road is not maintained? I mean, that might be outside your realm. I don't know.
No, that's a question. I do get calls quite often from realtors on whether the road, especially in the very south end of the valley off of East Side Lane, America Way, if we maintain those gravel roads. And to answer your question, yes, a lot of times people are researching, the realtors are researching that. Sometimes it's even the mortgage company that calls and wants to know, because certain type of loans require that they live on a public road that's maintained.
You know, going back to what Commissioner Tarkanian said, I found the same thing to be kind of quite troublesome, okay? For instance, a couple of years ago, I got a call from a business out on Meridian, okay, in the Meridian industrial area, and he was complaining about the wide cracks in that road as he was coming into his business, and why the county wasn't repairing that. And when I called you, you had indicated that that particular road was built by the builder, the developer, and yet was not built to our standards, and therefore we had not accepted that for maintenance. So it surprised me also, and I guess I never questioned that, of why would we let them build it without it being to our standards? You know?
Yeah, and see, I don't mean to, but that's different than building a road a home way out by yourself, and there's, you don't have many people coming and going. This is an industrial park, which means, by its terminology, big trucks are going to be coming in and out of that area. What can you, and I know you may not have been there when the vote was taken, but can you think of any, or maybe Ms. Davison, any reason why the county wouldn't require an industrial road to be built to its standard?
Phil Ritker, Director of Public Works, for the record. The road in particular in that Meridian Business Park area that you're talking about, when it was, the supposition is that when that was constructed more as a driveway to access the properties within that business park, not as a industrial road. So, I mean, you've got a lot of areas where essentially they become extensions of their parking. They become extensions. They declare them as roads. They name them, but they weren't built to a standard because they were built to whatever the parking lot standard was.
Madam Chair, if I may just jump in. I think that adds to the complexity of this conversation. We're talking about over 50 years worth of policy decisions by dozens of county commissioners and county staff team members. I would tell you that it is very clear, based on recent actions of the county commission to adopt ordinances, which we'll get into in a future slide, that we're not in the business of doing that anymore. But we have been handed 189 miles worth of roads that we currently have no maintenance plan and we do not maintain. And that is an important policy discussion and consideration for this county commission moving forward as we keep that in mind. We'll get back to those 189 miles in future slides. Yeah. Yeah, it's a coincidence, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a coincidence that those two numbers match.
For Phil Richter, for the record, the one is 189.02 miles and the other is 188.71 miles.
It's a rounding. I'm moving
The county roads are broken up in classifications. I'm sure everybody hears this all the time. We have the regional roads, which are arterial and collector roads. These are the roads that connect population centers together. So like Buckeye Road, County Road, Johnson Lane, Centerville, Jacks Valley Road, Mottsville. Those are examples of what are considered regional roads or arterial and collectors. They usually normally carry a heavier volume of traffic. They normally have a speed limit of up to 45 miles an hour, and they're a benefit to everybody in the community. Then we have local and residential roads. Those are residential streets that people live on, such as Palomino Drive, in Ruhenstrasse, Windmill Road, Highland Way, Downs Drive, Alpine View Court. These typically have less volume of traffic on them. And the reason we do this is because of we have to classify the roads. It's a federal highway requirement. They have a process that we go through for roadway classification. And then it's approved by NDOT. And it comes down to access control. Each one has a little different type of access control, farther spacing of driveways, whether or not the intersections are controlled by a signal or not. So that's where we go into road classification.
Members of the commission, you're going to learn in a future slide that how we classify our roads also affects how we choose to fund them and what funding sources through either a policy decision by this county commission or through federal requirements, how we pay for road repair and maintenance. So we'll talk about that in the future.
So when you get down to the county maintained roads and you break them out into regional and local roads account for 74.3 miles of the roads that we maintain, and the local roads are 114.7 miles.
So, and I think that when we talk about local roads, we're not talking about those roads. These are only county maintained roads. We're not talking about those roads that are within general improvement districts or perhaps homeowner association areas. I don't know if those are considered county roads. So we're not talking about those roads these are the ones that we maintain out of our budgets, not the GID, TRE, the Ranchos and other GIDs. We're not talking about those roads, right? I think that's that we need to make that distinction.
That is correct, Commissioner Gardner, and that's a great segue into the next slide, which we do break out the mileage in the whole county. This is all the public road miles in Douglas County. The top three are the ones we're talking about today, the gravel roads, the grinding roads, and the paved roads. The rest that you can see there are the ones that aren't accepted for maintenance, the town of Gardnerville, town of Genoa, town of Mendon, and then all the GIDs are listed there, as well as the Nevada State DOT and their roads.
I'll give you a minute to look at that.
Phil, you want to, excuse me, go back to that slide? Yeah. Just a point of clarification, when you're looking at this chart, when you get to the town roads, the GID roads, in particular, and even some of the HOA private roads, it's not that they're not maintained, it's that they're maintained through different mechanisms, different funding sources through those either towns or GIDs. And as Jennifer said, we'll talk about that in a later slide as well.
Will this be available on our website?
Yes, this presentation will be uploaded on the website and will stay on the website.
So when we look at the county roads, There are county roads that are within certain GIDs because they're considered collector roads, or they're right on the outside edge of the GIDs, and they weren't incorporated into the GID. So this is an example here of the Gardenville Ranchos GID. You can see we got Tillman Lane going right down through the middle of the GID, and that's considered a collector road. And then Kimmerling and some of the more rural, larger lot roads in the Chambersfield area. So just because there's a GID doesn't mean we don't enter that GID. There are certain ones that we maintain the roads. Next slide. For the most,
I guess what I'm saying is that the ranchos have more county designated
Yes.
roads than most other GIDs.
yes. We had a lot of questions regarding Topaz Ranch Estates GID. So you can see the shaded area, gray is the GID area. We do maintain 2 roads just outside of that GID area, Quail Run Road and Holbrook Court, down in the low that's highlighted in the red. This is an example of an area that's not a GID and how there are roads mixed in that are not maintained by the county. Again, this was discussed previously as why we don't maintain some of these roads. Some of them are considered private easements into the properties and were never dedicated as right-of-way. The developer may have paved them, but there was never right-of-way granted to the county. That may have been to maintain the lot size as one possibility. So there are roads throughout there that are mixed.
Is there a way for you just to, later on, not now, give us a number of what are not county-maintained roads that are owned by the county? Because it seems like you commingled this with private easements. This is just for my knowledge later. I don't want to hold you up on it, but.
Okay, yeah, we can look into that. Next slide. Same example, different area. This is at Topaz Lake, where the county maintains kind of the northern half of below the lodge, but not to the far south or to the far north. Okay. So how do we go about prioritizing our roads and coming up with which ones get maintained? The county has a pavement management system. It's called MicroPaver. It's a program that was developed by the Army Corps of Engineers. The program is maintained through the University of Colorado. And what it is we get surveys done on a road every 5 years, and we had one done this year. It used to be that we would hire interns to go out there and hand measure everything. Now it's done through an automated van with lasers and different types of computerized equipment that videos the road and comes up with the rating of the road. And the rating of the road is called a PCI, Pavement Condition Index. And so we use this and we rank all the pavement conditions on the paved roads. And I want to emphasize that it's on the paved roads, not the grinding roads or the gravel roads, but on the paved roads. And this helps us model future conditions. It helps us prioritize the projects. It tells us when a road is eligible for a slurry seal or chip seal, but it also tells us when those roads are beyond that point where chip seal and slurry seal will no longer be a benefit to the life of the road, and we're going to have to wait it out until the road gets to a point where we have to do a full reconstruction on it. So that helps us with long-range planning, short-range planning, and just preserving the infrastructure that we have out there. So the pavement condition index, as I was talking, is a numerical rating of the pavement condition. We measure all the distresses, the cracks, the rutting, the different types of stresses that occur on pavement, and it gets ranked from 100 down to 0. So when we look at projects, I'll use a slurry seal or chip seal, for example. What we're trying to do is extend the life of the pavement in the fair to good condition and to prolong that rating as long as we can. All pavement, regardless, eventually is going to wear out due to weather, different conditions. And so what we want to do in the pavement preservation projects is to extend the good, satisfactory, and fair as long as we possibly can. So for example, a chip seal will add possibly 7 years to the life of the pavement. But it's still going to eventually keep dropping over the years. When you get down to the poor and down to the very serious or failed, that's when you start looking at other methods such as overlays and full reconstruction.
I have one other question, and I can't remember the name of the road, but remember I went out there, the lady had called me, and there was a bunch of the holes there, and the county was filling them in with a little bit of fill here or there. Do you know remember that going on? Is that out our way? It was in the East Valley. Yeah. And I just was wondering where that would have fell on your spectrum. Do you remember the road I'm talking about?
I've looked at a lot
I
of
just
roads with different
harassed you so much.
commissioners over the years.
Anything I do, keep me out of your memory, God.
Maybe it would be easier to give an example of each one of these categories of roads that are common that people would know.
Okay, yeah. Again, if it was a grindings road, we don't have a rating on it. If it was a paved road, we do rate it.
It's a paved road, and she lived way out there. And my understanding when we talked was there wasn't a lot of homes out there originally, so there wasn't a lot of work that you did. Then developments went on the north and south side of the main road, and they did a really nice job with their new pavement. You can see how big difference. But that main road, it doesn't. Listen, I'm holding everybody up for this. It's okay. We could talk privately.
Sure.
Commissioner, perhaps we can answer your question in a different way. So I'm going to put Mr. Erb on the spot. Can you give us, Mr. Erb, an example of a road that's in really good condition that we would all likely know about?
Jacks Valley Road, it was repaved about 8 years ago. Would still be considered in the 85 to 100 range.
How about something in the mid-range?
Mid-range, fair, out here, County Road. A lot of you may have driven it to get here. County Road, it was just chip sealed. It's getting to the point where a chip seal is not going to add any more benefit after the next 7 years, because this chip seal will hopefully last at least 5 to 7 years, and then that road's going to have to look at a different type of maintenance, like a mill and fill.
And how about the bottom of the range?
Very poor bottom of the range.
That's grindings. Or, yeah.
No, Clapham's paved.
Well,
I thought Clapham was grindings.
the business park off of Johnson Lane, Business Parkway, it's considered very poor to serious range. So it's hasn't held up very good since they built that.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question to give you an idea. We just recently conducted a pavement analysis and received the results back for this workshop. And so the data we're going to show you, we will break up into percentages. We don't get into road specifics. But if anyone's interested in wanting to know the exact score for a road, we'd be happy to make that information available to them. It is the policy of the county commission currently that a score or a road condition of 70 is our target that we would like to attain as an organization. With that, we're going to jump into our next as an average, as an overall average. That's what we would like to hit. So with that, we're going to jump into our next interactive question. And Phil, do you mind going around with?
But they still need to, aren't they?
No, it's a new one.
They don't
So-
have to redo this.
No, I'm sorry. Just for clarification, we're going to take you, every new question requires a new QR code. And I apologize, but it does, folks. And if I had to do this over again, I probably would have done it differently. And I apologize. It's the way the software collects the data. So I'll give you a second to scan that, and it's probably telling you you're waiting on me. Yep. It's funny, you test these with team members and you think, oh, this is really slick. Everyone's going to get this. And then you try it out in a public workshop and go, probably should have done that differently. Okay, cool. So if you need, raise your hand if you need the QR code, because I'm going to jump on so everyone can take the quiz. So we're on questions number 2 and 3. Here's that QR code one more time, and let's dive into that first question. We have 2 questions here. How satisfied are you with the current condition of Douglas County maintained roads? Give it 30 more seconds.
I think if half the county's happy, we can just close up and go now, right?
All right. Well, we might change their mind as a result of this presentation. It would be interesting to see what the results are before and after.
It kind of continues on with what I did.
All right. So, again, these questions will stay open for the public to be able to participate for a period of time afterwards. We're anticipating at least 2 weeks, so we'll continue to collect this data. But currently, based on 21 respondents, we're seeing 2 individuals very satisfied, 3 somewhat, 6 neutral, 8 somewhat dissatisfied, 2 very dissatisfied. So we're trending towards neutral or dissatisfied. All right, next question. What should be the county's target overall PCI rating? We told you our current policy is 70. Do you agree, or should it be something different? Some people jumped ahead, so that's probably why we had 19 respondents already when I flipped to this slide. We'll give it 30 more seconds. All right, it looks like the majority of respondents, and now we have 29 individuals who have responded so far, indicate that they agree with the county's policy of somewhere between 70 to 85 is an appropriate pavement condition for us to have as our target. All right. Back to our... Okay. Well, now that I asked you what our target should be, we totally loaded this question. Let's talk about what the actual conditions of our roads are.
We just finished the,
Oops, sorry.
oops.
Go ahead, John.
So we just
Here.
finished the pavement condition survey. We did that with a partnership through Carson City, Campo, but we included all the roads, all the paved roads in Douglas County. Campo is the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Association. So it's an MPO that Douglas County, the north part of Douglas County, is a member of. And so they sent out they did a contract to have the roads within the Campo area surveyed for PCI indexing, and we added to that contract. It helped us quite a bit in savings, so we didn't have to do a separate contract. So,
Phil Ritker for the record. The Campo contract was for regional roads only, but regional roads within the, as John said, the northern part of the county, the Carson area, and parts of Lyon County. As John said, we contracted with them to then extend that to all of our local roads, local paved roads, as well as all the regional roads to the southern part of the counties were included.
the results of that survey, our regional paved roads had a PCI of 79, satisfactory. Our local roads had a PCI of 58 in the fair range, and the average of all of the roads combined was 66.
John, do you mind just, I think I heard a question in the audience, and I promise everyone we will get to your questions, but I figured, hey, I heard it, so why not address it? Why don't we know the condition of our gravel and grindings roads? Why don't we, do we have a mechanism for measuring the condition of those?
We do not have, there's no proven method of measuring those. We do address our grinding roads mostly by complaints. If there is a area that's deraveling, the grindings. So let me back up and explain what a grindings road is. A grindings road is reused asphalt that's ground up from another project. We received in the 1990s, most of the older portion of the Johnson Lane were gravel roads. And so back in the early 1990s, when they were redoing the freeway between Minden and Carson City, NDOT offered us grindings, and the maintenance department put those down on the roadways. We re-oiled them, rolled them, and they've actually held up pretty well considering what they are, but they weren't put down as a hot mix like you see traditional paving. So that's a grindings road. Then a gravel road, of course, is just made out of DG or area gravel.
So as I understand this slide, Mr. Erb, is that on the regional roads that most of us drive to get to the businesses and other areas, those are at 79, okay, which is pretty good, actually. It's the locally paved roads that we all travel getting into our neighborhoods. Those are where when we get off that regional road, that's where we are experiencing the majority of our issues, as I would see, right? And that's where we're going to experience it is when you get off that regional road and go into the neighborhood. Now, all of a sudden, the road deterioration is greater.
That is correct. Our regional roads have actually come quite a bit up in the PCI ranking. We have put in $23 million in the last 10 years into our regional road. As you recall, Jacks Valley Road, we got completely reconstructed, as well as Centerville Lane, Buckeye, Toller, Dresserville Road, Dump Road. So there's been a lot of improvements over the last 10 years that brought that PCI number up. This is a breakdown, just a pie chart of the previous numbers of where you can see kind of the weighted average of each PCI based on the road classification.
Can you remind me, at what point are they unsalvageable?
At what point are,
Meaning reconstruction.
well, once you get usually below a 55 PCI, you really don't want to spend the money on the road with a chip seal or slurry seal because it's just going to reflect right back through within a year or two. So those roads, you just do your general pothole repair and some patches here and there to get the life of the road to extend it as long as you can before you do reconstruction. And if you had more funding, you wouldn't have to extend it as long as you can. With the lack of funding, we're trying to extend things way beyond what we normally would in road maintenance.
So can I make an analogy here? It would be similar to a used car, right? I mean, you reach a point in a used car where it becomes more for you to take it into the shop on a weekly basis and have it maintained than it does just to buy a brand new car. Is that a good analogy of where we're at here on this type of thing?
Yes, Commissioner, I think that's a reasonable analogy, and if the Commissioner could hold their questions, we're actually going to get to that entire topic in about 3 or 4 slides here. So I think we've got a section here where we're going to go through this in some detail, and I hope at the end of that section, if you've got questions, we can then address them all at once. I think the thing that we wanted to point out is while the average on this one, while the average is 79 for our regional roads, you'll notice that there is something in roughly around 17% of the roads that still are in that very poor condition, which put us in the category of really those still need, those are beyond just a slurry seal or a chip seal and are in the categories now where we're looking at reconstruction or at some form of rehabilitation.
This is the pie chart for the local pavement conditions.
Again, on this one, I think the thing to point out here is while the average is 58%, you'll notice that only roughly 37.5% are in good or satisfactory type condition above that 70 PCI index rating. Which means really 73% of our roads are in need of significant rehabilitation.
I'm sure the public is very interested in seeing what roads are in that 85 to 100%, right?
So what makes a road fall apart? Well, the biggest one is weather conditions. We live in an area that has one of the highest numbers of freeze-thaw cycles in the country. That constant freezing and thawing, it expands the pavement, it shrinks the pavement, expands and shrinks. So that's one of the top reasons. The other is vehicle use, the volume of cars, the type of traffic, loading of the traffic, trucks, plays a big part in the life of pavement, along with the soil conditions, and then utility cuts and patching. Anytime you have a utility cross the road and they have to cut the road, we do have a no-cut policy. It's only 3 years, but that adds to, it gives water and access to get under and into the pavement. So because of the freeze-thaw cycles, those cracks, those saw cuts and that patching on a utility trench never completely stays sealed up. And then just from your thermal cracking, alligator cracking, rutting, and raveling, that's all due to weather, traffic volumes. I get a lot of questions about why are our cracks in Douglas County so large? And it's not just Douglas County, Carson City, Lyon County, Mono County even has them. There was a pavement design in the early 90s that used a all-light aggregate. The rock in the asphalt was lighter, so the trucks could haul a bigger load. What they didn't realize was those rocks were absorbed oil. And over the years, those rocks keep absorbing the oil, and the pavement keeps shrinking. So you get the big, large cracks, and they're spaced anywhere from 100 feet to 200 feet. We've tried all sorts of methods. We cut those cracks out, patched. Now you got 2 cracks that grow every year, and it's amazing. This pavement's 20 years old, and it's still shrinking. But between the cracks, the pavement's in really good condition between the cracks, but it's just those large cracks, and they're hard on vehicles. And we've been experimenting with different methods of trying to fix those cracks. We've found some that work better than others. We've gotten a new crack material. It's not cheap. It's very expensive. It's a mastic type of crack material that we put in the large cracks. It seems to be better. The old style crack material would heat up in the summer and sink down below the pavement. So the new mastic material actually seems to stay there and adhere to the pavement edges.
Okay, Phil Whitker for the record. So to address your question about the when is it time to replace the car instead of taking it to the mechanic, this is the chart that will lay that out for you. I'm going to walk through each one of the lines up here so that it's to make it more understandable. The very first line, the blue line with the words performance under it, that is new pavement. That's the condition of new pavement, starting out with a PCI index of 100. And then the scale below it is the number of years. So as new pavement, if you did nothing to it and just allowed it, it would degrade over time and continue to fall down on the PCI index to the point where you hit that critical terminal level, which means you've lost the life of that pavement. The next line up there, the green one, sort of olive green, is the chip and slurry seal. These are the pavement preservation mechanisms, which we attempt to do funding available every 7 to 8 years, more frequently if you could. But the idea there is as the pavement is degrading, you put a new top coat on it, essentially a new slurry or chip seal on it, and you raise that PCI index back up, and then it'll continue to decay back down on its normal cycle. So what you're doing there is every cycle, it drops down. You now put a new surface coat again on top of it. You raise that back up, and then you continue to repeat that cycle. So that's the mechanism there. So the idea is that over the course of, say, 30 years, with 4 cycles like that, you still would end up with a pavement condition that is above that 70. The yellow line, minor rehabilitation, is the example of we do nothing until the PCI index falls to 50, or that 55 range, and then we go in and decide we've got to mill off the surface, do a one-time shot where we mill it, and then repave it with 2 inches, 2 inches of asphalt on top to bring it back up, and then allow it obviously to degrade again from that point on. The last line, the red line, is if you wait till the road is below that critical index of 40, now you're into a major rehabilitation, which is complete reconstruction. So that's remove all of the asphalt, put new base down, rebuild the whole road, which we have had to do in a couple of cases around here. And that's really what we're looking at. So the justification or the rationale behind this, which is the next slide, kind of walks through the example of the cost to do each of these. So the idea is, when I talked about pavement preservation, that chip seal, slurry seal, at a cost of around $55,000 per mile, If you do that over the course of 30 years and you've done it 4 times, that $55,000 translates to about $220,000 that you've spent to rehabilitate or maintain that road over the course of that 30-year life. By comparison, if you wait for it to degrade to the point where you, and I'll assume you're lucky and you can just do a pavement rehabilitation, which is a mill and a fill type operation, now you're dealing with about $586,000 per mile. And if you've gone beyond that to the point where complete reconstruction is needed, it's a $1.3 million event. And that's at today's pricing. So when someone says, why are you putting down chip seals? Why are you doing a slurry seal on a road that looks like it's in great shape? It's because if we wait till it gets to the point where it can't receive a chip or slurry seal, we've more than tripled the cost to then do the repair compared to just doing that preventative maintenance. You can talk about this one.
Bill touched on the different types of rehabilitation. So the preventive maintenance, the slurry seals and chip seals, we do those, we try to do them at least every 7 years. And then when we do them, we do get a lot of feedback from the public on why are we putting a new surface on a new roadway. So now you know, we're putting a new surface on a new roadway to extend the life of it. And it's just a slurry or a chip seal. The other type of minor rehabilitations we do would be a mill, just an overlay, a 2-inch overlay on a project. And we have done some 2-inch overlays around on the local roads, and we do those in-house. We have a small paver, and we've gone out on roads that meet, and even some grinding roads that because we want to see how well the overlay will hold up. We come in and we'll do an overlay. If it's just the pavement, depending on the type of distresses, if the base is good and we can tell, and it's just the pavement's unraveling, we'll do a in-house overlay on those.
That's still an astronomical number in my mind, the 2-inch overlay, in that if we have 189 miles of roads in the county and we have, I think by the previous slide, about 50% that were approaching that threshold, right? About 50%. You had a pie chart there that talked about.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, when I'm looking at it is that $500,000 for a linear mile, that is becoming an astronomical and perhaps an unachievable number.
Yes, we have a lot of miles of roads in Douglas County. We have quite a large backlog. Yes, your observation is correct.
And I apologize, Commissioner. I advanced to this slide because I'm cutting to the chase. What you just said is the reason why we have and I'm about to give you an updated number. Before we had our recent PCI analysis that was just finished in March, I was publicly quoting we had a $50 million backlog in road maintenance. That number has increased to $65 million. And we're going to talk about how many miles of road and how much it costs to maintain each of those things, because we have let the condition of some of these roads degrade to a point where it is 3 times the cost to maintain them as it would have been if we had done a slurry seal earlier. So with that, let's jump into our backlog of road maintenance. And then probably we have 1, 2, 3 slides before a break, I think, if that works, Madam Chair?
Yes, so maybe
Okay.
10 minutes till a break, something
Yes.
like that?
Yes.
Good.
So the backlog of road maintenance, our regional roads are slowly improving, and that's, as I said, we put $23 million into regional roads and in the last 11 years, and approximately $6 million in pavement preservation. So we're maintaining our regional roads. Our local roads, they're lacking. They're slowly going down in PCI, and we do most of the maintenance in-house with the road department, but there's not a lot of funding in there for the local roads. So looking at the regional road PCI, and this is where Commissioner Gardner was talking about, you look at the costs for, and we kind of categorize these as far as failed to good and the type of maintenance that we would do on them, whether Fulton reconstruction or overlay or mill and fill. You can see our backlog's about 13 million on our regional roads. Yeah. Our local roads, we have quite a few local roads that are in the serious to very poor range. To fully reconstruct these and do the overlays, we're looking at $52 million here. And so your total backlog is $65 million. And so it's not just the pavement on some of these residential roads. If there's curb, gutter, and sidewalk there, we're required by federal law to update the ADA ramps. And so that adds a significant amount. So if you look at roads like in Saratoga Springs, in order for us to reconstruct those, once you go to a reconstruction, even a minor reconstruction, the Department of Justice requires that the ADA ramps all be brought up to today's standards, and that adds a significant amount to our costs.
As we have developers build out their developments, though, they are all required to put in those requirements. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
What is the cost per curb ramp? Is it 30 grand?
Just a single curb ramp. Just I'll cut out the old one and do the new concrete and put the tactile strip in is usually $4,000 to $5,000 each.
Well, there, see, we just saved me money. So $5 grand a curb ramp. So when you're driving home, you can just start counting those corners. So, all right.
So in our road capital improvement plan, we do have regional roads identified. Mottsville Lane is due for reconstruction. Kimmerline Road, Pine Nut Road.
Can I ask you about Kimberly? Didn't you just do that?
Yes, we did a chip seal on it because we need to extend it out.
That was just done this past year, right?
Yes.
So what are you going to do? What are you going to do now? It doesn't say really.
So since we don't have the funds to do it within the next 5 years, these aren't in order of years because we're going to ask the public that. We did do a chip seal on that to try to extend it out at least another 7 years before we get to a point where we're going to lose it. So Pine Nut Road, there's a section of Pine Nut Road missing from where it was reconstructed by the developer and where Dump Road starts that we reconstructed. There's a section of where Toller turns into Fish Springs that hasn't been reconstructed. Orchard Road is another road that's starting to get below the satisfactory condition. And then there's a piece of Buckeye Road that was not completed the first time because of shortages of funding. We only went so far.
Yeah, as John pointed out, Phil Rickard for the record, these are not in any specific order. They're just they're in terms of priority. It's really just a matter of identifying the types of roads that are in the capital plan, and which ones need to be prioritized in the future, depending on how they last. So as he said, some of these roads we've actually they've gone back and done some chip seals and slurry seals. recognizing that they won't be able to reconstruct them for a longer period of time and need to at least try to maintain that pavement and extend its life out till when we do have funding.
It seems as if it could be a real complex analysis to figure out what to do with each road, because you might be treating better roads before you treat worse roads, so that they don't become worse, and so you can be more effective with your money.
Madam Chair, that is correct. One of the things we look at is also the volume of traffic and how much that road is being used in the determination. So.
Okay, Madam Chair, going into our break, we'll ask our audience and those following along at home to participate in our next interactive question. In that list of projects that we had that we said we need to keep in mind for the next 5 years, we're asking the public to help us rank those projects and asking for feedback on that. So with that, also, Madam Chair, I think this is a good spot to take maybe a 5-10 minute break, whichever you prefer.
All right, well, let's reconvene at 5 minutes to 3, and people can take the survey during the break.
Okay.
Can I ask another quick question before we go? So, Mr. Erb, on those numbers that you gave, those don't include our grindings roads, right? Those are only paved roads in those totals? So that only includes for Johnson Lane, Johnson, Vicky, Stephanie, Clapham, right? Everything else is, well, Bramwell.
Well, the regional roads in Johnson Lane are South Santa Barbara, Vicky, Johnson Lane, and Stephanie. Everything else is considered a local road. And then of the local...
Right, but correct, Commissioner Tolbert, to your question, yes, those numbers, that backlog is only for paved roads in the Johnson Lane area, or whether regional or local. It's any of the grinding roads would not actually be in that total. I mean, the estimate, you could double that number in terms of the backlog if you wanted to try and include all the grinding roads.
All right, let's find our seats. All right, we're going to be starting here in just a second. All right. We are down a couple of commissioners, but I have to assume they'll be in momentarily, and let's go ahead and continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the commission. I am going to just briefly point out that it looks like in a ranking with 16 respondents, 2 lanes of Moeller Parkway comes out on top, followed by Kimmerling and Mottsville Lane. Again, we'll keep these responses open to the public for a period of time, and we encourage individuals to continue to participate and help us spread the word that we're looking for feedback. All right. So we are now shifting gears to funding. How much money do we have? Let's talk about that. Not a lot. Or lack thereof, yep. Okay. Sorry, present, have to hit the button. There we go. So this section's a road funding overview. In Douglas County, we have 4 dedicated sources of road funding. They include gas tax, property tax, room tax, and residential and commercial construction tax. And I'm going to break down each of these sources in greater detail in the following slides. The first topic we're going to talk about is gas tax. So there is a state mandated component of the fuel tax that we collect, which comes back to Douglas County. A portion of fuel tax does, of course, go to the state, but of the state mandated portions, approximately 6 cents, not approximately, exactly 0.0635 comes back to Douglas County. What does that look like in terms of revenue generated annually? Well, this is a 10-year look at that revenue. It hovers somewhere above $1 million to somewhere just under 1.25 at the maximum amount that we saw. And I think our highest year collection was actually in 20.
Ms. Davidson, and maybe it's in another slide, this is regular fuel, whether it be premium or regular fuel. This has nothing to do with diesel.
Correct.
Or does it deal with diesel?
No diesel fuel tax
Okay.
is included
Have we
in
done a
this.
similar study in regards to diesel fuel?
Yes, we'll let you know how
Okay.
much diesel fuel would generate. Yes, sir. Currently, Douglas County does not collect diesel fuel tax. This is just do you call it standard fuel? It's not diesel. Yes. For those who are curious, where does our authority to collect these taxes come from? We listed the relevant sections of the Nevada Revised Statute. All right. In addition to the state mandated 6 cents, and I'm rounding just for ease of this conversation, the county collects an additional 9 cents, and we refer to it as the county option gas tax. We have not always collected 9 cents. Prior to 2016, we were actually only collecting 4 cents. The county commission in 2016 made the bold decision to increase the tax by the additional 5 cents, which resulted in some additional revenue to the county. Prior to them doing so, on average, the county was collecting as part of the optional component of the gas tax, somewhere around $750,000 each year. When that number increased, our revenue increased and reflects that, obviously. And so since that time, we have been hovering somewhere between 1.5 million, to at its highest nearly 2 million in revenue that's been generated by this 9-cent option. That 9-cent option is at the max. The county has no discretion to increase this any further. Again, I provided a little bit of the history here. I was really hoping to capture in this presentation. Our team has spent months researching this information and compiling this history. We didn't want anyone who comes after us in terms of county staff to ever have to replicate this again. So now it's all in one spot, and it's a good reference for us for future conversations. Gas tax, all sources combined, the county averages anywhere between 3.3 million to just under 3 million annually that we collect in the gas tax. That includes the state mandated portion of 6 cents plus the 9-cent county option. Now I'm going to move to property tax if no one has any
Well,
further.
okay, so I'm sorry, I need to back up then on that gas tax. And we already talked about the fact that we don't make any money on diesel fuel. Has there been any studies on the amount of diesel fuel that gets sold in our county?
Yes, sir. So in a later section of this presentation, I'm going to go into great detail about additional options that we have not pursued as a county and how much revenue each of those options would generate if we were
Very
to
good,
pursue them.
thank you.
Thank you. Property tax. All right. So before we get into this section, I really wanted to ask the public how much they think they pay on average per property, per parcel, do they think they pay in property tax that is dedicated to roads? So I'm going to go to Menti. I think we're on question 5. Thank you. Sorry, Phil. Hold on, we're gonna get it. I'm pulling it up. Here we go. For those who need the QR code, I'll give you about 30 seconds and we'll circulate that information for the audience. And here we go. On average, how much per property do you think Douglas County residents pay in property taxes for regional road repair and maintenance? Is it $513 per year, $342, $158, $93, $61, or $37? And this is just for regional road maintenance. If you live in a town or GID, we did not include the amount you pay to the town or GID in this math. This is only the amount you pay for county-maintained roads. All right. Looks like we got about 22 respondents and we've leveled off. 9 respondents, most think that the average is $93. The answer is $61. So on average, Douglas County residents pay in their property taxes for regional road maintenance $61 per year. All right, so let's talk about where that money goes and how much revenue that results in for Douglas County. All right, that $61 has resulted in Douglas County collecting, or anticipating collecting at the end of this fiscal year, approximately $1.6 million. That has gone up annually based on the assessed values of homes going up annually. At one point, it was much lower. The assessed values of homes were much lower, and so the amount of the tax proportionately was much lower. But $1.6 million total is collected in property taxes from the residents of Douglas County for regional road maintenance.
Ms. Davidson, in that regard, Because we have caps on property tax, property sales tax, I mean, personal property tax, right? Because we have caps on that, even if we wanted to, we could not increase those because a lot of our properties are at the maximum already of 3.66. Is that a correct analysis, or am I missing the boat here on this?
That's not correct.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that as one of the future funding option considerations for the county commission, and we'll talk about what type of revenue that might generate at that time. I'm going to invite our Chief Operating Officer, Kathy Lewis, to join the conversation at this point with your permission, Madam Chair, because assessed values play such an interesting role on property tax collections. And she describes it so much better than me. So for the next 2 slides, Ms. Lewis is going to join the conversation, and I'm sure you'll have lots of follow-up questions for her. But what we wanted to do, and I really appreciate Kathy doing this, is taking a look at how much money are we generating in each of the areas of the county from these property taxes. And this is a breakdown of each of the taxing districts and the corresponding color on the map, and how much money is generated in property tax for regional road maintenance in each of these areas. And it differs from area to area for a lot of reasons, one of which has to do with the age of homes, assessed value of homes. With that, Kathy, is there any points you want to make on this slide before I go to the next one? Okay, we also have a printout of this. It is, do you mind going and grabbing? If anyone in the audience, I know this is really small information on the screen, so we have printed this information, and anyone who wants to look at these maps in closer detail, you can see. Just for example, I'm going to call out let me do the biggest area. It is Area 500, which is this gray area right here, generates the largest proportion of property tax, and it's generating approximately $726,000 worth of property tax for regional road maintenance. Let's see, another area, Topaz Ranch GID.
So I want to make sure we're clear on this. Regional road maintenance, not local road maintenance.
Yes,
right?
correct.
Okay,
Yes,
because
yes.
there's a very big distinction there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I get residents down in Topaz Ranch Estates that are saying, well, we're paying into the regional road tax maintenance fund, but it's not benefiting us. And I said, yes, it does benefit you because most of their time is spent on regional roads, not on local roads. Right?
Yes.
So.
Yes. So Topaz Ranch GID is the tan area here, generates $15,000 in property taxes for regional road maintenance. So I'm just giving you an idea of the kind of range that we're talking about here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lewis for a more detailed discussion on this slide, which is the same information, it's just in a Excel spreadsheet instead.
Thank you. Kathy Lewis for the record. The survey question was, what was the average contribution that residents have? But the average includes the multi-million-dollar houses at the lake versus the homes in other areas, so it's the average. But this slide shows in each area, what does that average look like? So if you look in the yellow for the areas, and it's easy for me to go personal, so I live in the town of Minden, which is down in 510. There is, right next to the yellow, $40.72 per 100,000 assessed value. Now, please remember, assessed value is not your not what your home is worth. Assessed value is 35% of the taxable value, which is still less than what your home is worth. So my home in the town of Minden, assessed value is about $85,000. So I pay a little bit less than, I just forgot that number, than $47 a year on preventative road maintenance that comes to the county. I do pay taxes to the town of Minden, which helps maintain the town of Minden roads, like Commissioner Gardner had mentioned, but to the county to maintain the regional roads, I pay a little less than $47 a year on that. So that's each of the areas. What County Manager Davidson had said, it is very interesting how each area is a different average, and that it depends on, because of the abatement, in that area, if they have more new assessed value, that average is different. If the total assessed value is different, if during the recession they lost more value than the other places did, then those averages are different. So those are the different numbers.
Do you know just round numbers, roughly what people are paying in from the GIDs for their districts compared to what the county's getting? So I lived in town of Minden, 47 is going that. How much roughly, just for an idea, are you putting into the town of Minden's maintenance of the roads, which is, because they're able to maintain at a higher level?
We have a slide for that. Yes. Yes. I'm telling you, I've never written 100 slides for any kind of presentation in my life, but we tried to anticipate every question we might possibly get. So I apologize for the lengthiness of the presentation, but I do think it's worthwhile. So if there's no further questions for Ms. Lewis, I'll jump to the next slide. So for those of you who are curious where you might find this information, how much am I personally paying on my property taxes for regional road maintenance? It's listed on your tax bill. It's this line item right here. It's labeled as preventative road maintenance. And so this is an example of an individual who owns a property in Johnson Lane, whose identity is anonymous for the purposes of conversation. This individual is paying $79.82. The assessed value of their home is $187,000. And I would just note for the public, the assessed value of your home is not the sales value of your home. It's a different calculation, right? The total taxes paid by this individual is $4,000, but as I mentioned, they pay about $80 for regional road. So Runstraw, another area of town, this individual is paying $42 for preventative road maintenance on their tax bill. The assessed value of their home is $195. The total taxes they pay is about $4,800, but again, only $42 of that is going for regional road maintenance. Why is that when the total tax bills are about the same? We'll take questions at the end. So it has to do with the age of the home, the assessed value of the home, and the location, and Ms. Lewis would be happy to discuss that in greater detail with you at one of the breaks. Okay, so town of Minden. So this will get to the question that you asked, Mr. Tolbert. We didn't break this out for each of the towns, but we did pull an example of the town of Minden. So the town of Minden from this individual property collects about $1,600, $1,650 in taxes to support the town of Minden services that they provide. Town of Minden provides a variety of services that include parks, roads, and additional specific services for the town. They pay separately for water and trash. So the $1,650 goes to road maintenance, drainage maintenance, and parks mostly. Stormwater, I said drainage. So they collect $1,600 for all of those things. I cannot tell you how much money the town of Minden allocates to road maintenance each year. That's why I couldn't exactly provide you. And I know they have a capital improvement plan and goals that they're shooting for. What I can tell you is they are responsible for maintaining 20 miles of road. They're getting $1,650 for drainage, parks, and roads. We're getting $139 for regional roads. And we told you it was, I think, 74 miles of regional roads that we are responsible for maintaining. The assessed value on this home was $297,000. Total taxes paid $9,000. And again, I told you what the county receives and what the town receives. All right. The next topic we're going to talk about is room tax. Douglas County charges transient lodging rental tax, TLRT. We charge a variety of taxes on visitors to our community who rent rooms in casino properties and other properties, but then also VHRs pay these taxes. And so in total, the county collects on average somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000 annually for this.
Is this the valley or you talk about Lake Tahoe too?
This is the valley.
Yeah, it's
The
not
reason-
Lake Tahoe.
No, and I'll talk to you about how much is generated up at the lake on a separate slide. So the law requires that we spend the amount that we collect in taxes for transportation in the area we collect these dollars. And so I will talk about the transportation fund for the lake separately and how much money is generated by VHRs and also short-term rentals in the lake. Last is residential and commercial yes. 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 Okay. Next is residential and commercial construction tax. One of the questions we received in advance of this workshop was, don't we make new construction pay for roads? In fact, we do. We charge a residential and commercial construction tax. We are allowed to per NRS. This is the authorization we have to do so. We collect $500 per home and $50 per square foot for other types of development, such as commercial development. Over the years, again, this is a 10-year picture. At its height in 2018, we collected as much as $500,000. We tend to average closer to somewhere between $200 to $300 each year annually. This is the lowest amount we are authorized to collect in this particular tax, and I will get into in a future slide. This may be something we want to take a look at increasing, but we cannot do so. We cannot increase this amount without a vote of the public, and we'll talk about that on a future slide as well.
Is it correct to call that, we always get into that question of taxes versus fees, okay? And fees tend to be user involved versus taxes are general involved. So this is really a fee, not really a tax. I would try to surmise, I guess.
They call it a new construction tax in the statute. If you want to call it a fee, we can call it a fee. I've heard discussion about impact fees before. I would argue those are slightly different. And we will also have a conversation about impact fees as part of this presentation. Okay. So how we classify roads matters. And it was a very significant conversation by the road task force that resulted in a policy being adopted by Douglas County. We fund regional road maintenance differently than we fund local road maintenance, and we'll tell you why in subsequent slides. But for the purposes of, I told you all the money, all the revenue we're taking in, now I'm going to tell you how it flows out. It's going to flow out into two funds. It flows out into two funds because of the policy that we have adopted that says we will fund road maintenance and repair differently on regional roads than we will fund maintenance and repair on local roads. So regional roads, John told you what those are mostly paid for in terms of major repair and maintenance through our regional transportation fund. Those roads are eligible for federal grants, so we can leverage any county money we put in potentially as a match for grants that we might receive. We fund those roads by county tax and property tax, and we also fund them from the state mandated portion of gas tax. Local and residential roads are not eligible for federal funds, but we do fund them from the state-mandated 6-cent portion of the gas tax. We do not fund them from the 9-cent optional portion. And again, we will get into why in just a moment. So we have 3 funds for road maintenance in Douglas County. The first is road operating, the second is regional transportation, and the last is the Tahoe Douglas Transportation District at the lake. Road operating is mostly for road operations, hence the name. These are for regular operations and not for capital improvements or major repair and maintenance. They mostly consist of, am I stepping on someone else's slide? I can just keep going. I'll just keep going. All right. They mostly consist of, feel free experts to step in because I am not an expert here, these types of projects. With that, Mr. Erb, do you want to talk about these types of projects?
Sure. The road operating, that's the day-to-day operation, and it's done with county staff. And there's examples up there of what we do with the road operating crew, from street sweeping, snow plowing, weed control, shoulder grading, roadside ditch cleaning, to operating the signals. A lot of people don't realize that all the signals on the state highways, they are maintained and operated by the county, as well as the power usage on them. Road signage, pavement markings, street lights, not all street lights. There's a mixture of street lights. Some NV Energy actually pays themselves. Others are paid by the GIDs. And then there's the general road maintenance of grading the gravel roads, crack sealing, pothole repairs, patching, and then we do some in-house overlays with our staff. And this includes all modes of transportation. So there is some maintenance that we do on bike lanes, ADA compliance, and peg crossings, whether we put in quite a few pedestrian activated crossing flashers in the last couple of years. So that's all done through the road operating funds.
So, Fund 232, we included an overview of the revenue and the tentative revenue for this fiscal year and next fiscal year, the budget we have been discussing by the County Commission. So we do all of the things on this screen with $1.5 million approximately. We have 6 employees on the road crew. They are amazing. Can't say enough positive things about them. They do a lot very cost effectively. We currently have 2 positions vacant and are actively recruiting for those. But we get a lot done in Douglas County for very little money on roads because of that crew, and we thank them for the work that they do. So this is a look at that road operating fund. So again, just to give you an idea, over the years, we are doing all of those operations funded through the 6-cent state mandated tax and the amount we collect on short-term rentals, the room tax, which equals somewhere between $1.2 to $1.3 million on average over the last 5 years, but you'll notice it sometimes is trending up and down. We do all of that work with that amount of money.
I just would like to observe that the gas tax, because of more efficient cars and more electric vehicles, is likely not to trend up. At best, it will stay even, and likely it will trend down.
That is our observation as well, Chairwoman. Gas tax for Douglas County definitely plateaued for the reasons that you have stated. And we will want to add our voices to the conversation for future considerations on what might be taxed, electric vehicles or other things, because it will either be a plateaued revenue source for us or a declining revenue source for us in the future. All right, this is a breakdown of the road operating fund in case someone really wanted to dig into all the revenue sources for the road operating fund. We told you about the 2 biggest, but we do pull in some other funding, including we transfer in $100,000 annually to road operating from regional transportation. The reason for this is we do also do some of those road operating projects sweeping, crack filling on regional roads as well. But for the most part, the biggest is the gas tax collection and then the room tax collection. Happy to answer any questions. We earn some interest in things on the money we collect. On the flip side of that, here's a more detailed look at the expenses. How are we spending it? You'll notice that our expenses are exceeding our revenue. Where we have been able to save money, either through vacant positions or because projects didn't happen, maybe it was a weather event that caused a delay or we didn't have all the funding we needed, we have built up a reserve in this fund. We are currently deficit spending in this fund in order to meet all of our road operating needs. We're dipping that reserve at a faster pace, and it's not sustainable. And eventually we're going to have to cut the level of service that we deliver on road maintenance on these roads. This is the proportion of salaries and wages, benefits, et cetera, and services and supplies. And I told you, I'm very proud of the work that the crew does. We get a lot of bang for our buck in what we're doing. Phil, do you want to step in? Sure.
The next fund that we want to talk about is the Regional Transportation Fund, or which is administered through the RTC. This fund is essentially what we'll call the Road Capital Projects Fund. It is what we fund all of the major restoration and rehabilitation projects. We've gone through this in detail earlier in the presentation, but just to remind you, the types of road pavement preservation initiatives that are funded through the RTC fund are the slurry and chip seals, the overlays, the mill and fills, and then the complete road reconstruction. And as was pointed out earlier, Douglas County has spent over $24 million on these regional roads since 2014, principally as a result of being able to bond for taking the proceeds of the increase in gas tax in 2014. And in subsequent years, they've been able to use those funds as a source of revenue for bonding. Which I think we'll talk about again in another slide. Oh yeah, I think it's on the next. Oh no, I can talk about it here. Sorry. So in terms of the overall fund, the revenue for that the fund is a little over $4 million last fiscal year, and in the tentative budget for this coming fiscal year, it's about $4.5 million. So as we mentioned, we went through in detail each of the revenue sources, funding sources earlier, but specifically for the Regional Transportation Fund, it is principally made up now of the county option gas tax, which is the orange bar there, the ad valorem tax, which is the purple, and then those construction tax, both residential and commercial, which is the top bar. So historically, we've been ranging somewhere on these three principal components from roughly just over $3 million to just a little bit over $3.5 million. As Jennifer pointed out, this is the complete breakdown of those funds. As we mentioned, we've given you the chart shows the principal sources of revenue, but there's additional revenue that comes into this from our investments. There is no fund transfers though from the general fund. I want to make sure I point that out, that we do not transfer any money in from the general fund for regional transportation. From an expense standpoint, this is a breakdown of our expenses. Total expenses in this fund are projected to be about $2.2 million. And as I said, the revenue is 4.5. So again, this is a capital projects fund. So really the revenue in excess of expense is used to fund future projects. It goes into reserves. One of the major expenses in this is the bond payment. Between the bond payment and the transfer to the regional fund, not the regional fund, to the road operating fund, that accounts for about $966,000 of this fund which is a significant portion of it. But again, it's what allowed us to do the $24 million in projects over the last 10 years. And the final fund is the Tahoe Douglas Transportation District. This is the district at the lake specifically, Fund 236. It is funded almost exclusively through the room tax, Lake Tahoe. Interesting, the revenue there, room tax revenue is $1.43 million in the past fiscal year, and it's projected to be about $1.46 million this coming year. It's used, the primary sources it's used for road operations, principally snow removal up at the lake, some sweeping as well. But then it's also principally used for transportation, including the microtransit system and the DART dial-a-ride. And then there is, in particular, Lake Parkway and one or two other regional roads up there that we use this fund for major repair and maintenance of those roads. So what are others doing in the region? If there aren't any questions, we'll move on. As part of this analysis, we want to take a look at what funding sources and road mileage is for Carson City, Lyon County, and Story County, principally what we call the quad counties in our area. To begin, I'm going to summarize Douglas County. Douglas County, as we said, total revenue. This is all sources, but across the lake, valley funds. These are valley funds only. This does not include the TDTD fund at the lake. But on the valley, all funds between regional and road operating, it's about $4.94 million. With that, we're maintaining 74 miles of paved roads, regional paved, 167 miles of local paved, and then 53 miles of grinding and gravel. Carson City has a total road budget of $11 million. Interesting here, the breakdown for them is sales tax. It's one of their largest contributors is sales tax. Under two NRS provisions, NRS 377A allows them a 1/4 cent sales tax for road improvements specifically, and then under 377B, that's the V&T sales tax, which was taken out for purposes of the railroad. That's a bond, and they take the surplus from those bond payments that are generated by this sales tax and contribute that over to roads. So it's not 100% of that, it's a portion, but the bond for the V&T sales tax will actually expire or will be paid off in I think 2 or 3 fiscal years from now. So it's anticipated that 100% of that revenue would then move over into to their road operating. Fuel tax, they do the same as us. They've got both the 9-cent county option as well as a state mandate. That generates $5.5 million for them. They have a diesel tax. They passed that a few years ago. So 5 cent per gallon option for diesel tax is generates a little over $500,000 for them. And then on a utility operator fee, their sanitation, which is their solid waste, they contract with Waste Management, and they take a portion of that franchise fee and contribute that back over to roads. That's how they get to their total of $11 million. Similar amounts of roads actually for Carson City, with 83 miles of paved road and 203 miles of local.
Before you go to the next jurisdiction, this is the most important thing to me, and actually should be for the residents here, because other jurisdictions are having the same issues and they're getting revenue somewhere. So can you be clear on what Carson is getting in revenue that we're not getting? They're getting the diesel tax and the franchise fee, I know. Of the sales tax, what are they getting that we're not getting here?
So of the sales tax, they're getting the entire $4.6 million that we're not getting. We do not have any portion of our sales tax that's allocated to road.
And I think Jennifer explained to me why, but you want to explain to the residents?
I think we will go through that in detail in a future slide.
So I guess the point is that they have about 8,000 more residents than us, and yet their revenue is almost double of ours. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay, more than double of ours, but, okay, with less roads to maintain, right?
They
I
have
mean, our
slightly-
regional roads were how many miles?
Yeah, they have slightly more paved roads than we do to maintain overall, and I mean very slightly. Interesting fun fact for Carson, our neighbors just recently had this conversation. They put 2 ballot initiatives on their ballot, which failed for road funding. Their roads are in worse condition than Douglas County's roads. They have way worse PCI scores than we do, even though they have much more funding for this. So the roads conversation in this region, this is a problem, not just for Douglas County.
These sales taxes you're talking about, I know that, for instance, they have a tremendous amount of car dealers, so they also have a tremendous amount of revenue in sales tax from those as well, right?
That is correct, Commissioner. We have a good indication of how much a 1/4-cent sales tax would generate in Douglas County, specific to Douglas County. It is less than this, but it is significant, and we'll talk to you about that. Additionally, I do think it's important for the public to note that this isn't just a general sales tax. This is specific for roads and can only be used for road maintenance and repair.
I would only contest just a little bit about where you said their roads are in better condition than ours, because we're not tracking our unpaved roads, which a lot of our roads, especially in Johnson Lane area, those are in very bad shape. But they're not even tracked in what we're displaying here. So just trying to keep all of that in the bubble.
Commissioner, I actually said the opposite. Their roads are in worse condition than ours.
Again, but that's because we're rating only our paved roads. Whereas if you look at our Johnson Lane roads, they are far worse condition than, yeah,
Yes.
maintained roads.
I think
right.
we're saying the same thing. Thank you.
So moving on to Lyon County, population similar to Carson City. In terms of revenue, just over $7 million in total revenue. Their revenue comes from the fuel tax, the same 9-cent county option, and the 6.35-cent state mandate. They also, so if you're looking at fees that they collect that we don't collect, we collect fuel tax. Diesel tax is a huge, very significant component for them in terms of their tax rate. Principally that they have services or access along Highway 80, so a major trucking route. So I think that's what drives a lot of their diesel fuel tax. They have a utility operator license fees that are paid into this fund, which we do not here in Douglas County. But they also have a construction tax, which is analogous to what we do here in Douglas County. So by comparison, the principal differences here is the diesel tax and the utility operator licensing fees. In terms of regional paved roads, they have 120 miles of regional paved roads, about 180 miles of local paved roads, and then 240 miles of gravel road. The last one, Story County, population of 4,000 people. They too have a 1/4-cent sales tax that was approved, which is probably their most significant source of funding. Fuel tax. Interestingly enough, they did not approve or go for the additional 5-cent per gallon county option tax that would be available to them. So they are at 4 cents per gallon on their county option, but they do collect the 6.35-cent state mandate. And they do a fund transfer of $1 million into their road fund. I don't have any details on that. I wasn't able to get details on that there, but that generates their $3 million. From a road maintenance standpoint, they have one regional road, 6 Mile. It's if you're familiar with it, it's actually called 6 Mile Canyon Road, aptly and appropriately named. Other than that, they have 76 miles of local paved roads. And they maintain, they have gravel roads in the area, but they maintain 0 of the gravel roads. So this is just that same information broken out by the bar charts. And I think it will show you the difference, it shows you the kind of the difference. All of us, all entities collect a gas tax in all forms, whether it be the county option or the state mandate. The blue line here is the diesel tax, so you'll see that both Carson City and Lyon County are the only 2 entities collecting diesel. The reddish, the dark red line is the sales tax. That's Story County and Carson City. Utility operator, Lyon County has a utility operator, and Douglas County has Carson City has a utility operator as well as Lyon County. Ad valorem, we're the only entity that has that. Construction tax, Lyon County and Douglas County collect that. And then room tax, we're the only entity that does that.
Okay, Madam Chair, if there's no questions here, we're going to jump into the next section. This is the history of the road task force and funding discussions that that team had. We appreciate their work. It was quite extensive. There were 18 residents who engaged with different backgrounds and perspectives from different geographic locations within the county to really take a deep dive look at this road issue back in 2013. They met multiple times, participated in field trips, and held public workshops for public feedback. As a result of their work, they made a number of several findings and a number of recommendations to the county commission. The county commission then took some of those recommendations and acted on them, which I'll talk about in this section. As we mentioned earlier in this presentation, one of the significant findings from the task force was that collector roads and local roads should be treated differently. Specifically, they did the work to identify why, right? Why, in fact, there should be a different methodology utilized for this. So the first finding that they made back in 2018 is that the county is facing a growing road maintenance challenge and additional funding is needed. If that sounds like deja vu, it is for us for sure. This conversation has continued since then, and that outlook has somewhat improved, but there's more work to be done on this front. Additionally, they found that funding for road maintenance was not identified, and that if funding for road maintenance was not identified, the condition of the county's roads were going to continue to deteriorate, and the cost of maintenance and repair was going to spiral out of control. The most significant finding I mentioned is that there is a distinction between regional roads and local roads, and it is significant and important policy consideration from the county, and here's why. 2/3 of residents in Douglas County live in towns and general improvement districts and are currently assessed additional property taxes for local road maintenance. The towns and GIDs maintain those roads. Towns maintain approximately 46 miles of local roads, and the GIDs maintain approximately 137 miles of local roads within their jurisdictions. The use of a county-wide revenue source to fund the maintenance of local roads for 1/3 of the county that does not live within a town or GID was viewed by the road task force as double taxation. In other words, put a different way, the road task force felt that individuals living within towns and GIDs were paying their proportionate share for local road maintenance already. So why should they be additionally taxed for the 1/3 of the population that was not, in the opinion of the task force, paying their proportionate share? The last finding by the task force was that regional road maintenance should be funded with regional taxes, such as countywide property tax, gas tax, sales tax, or utility operator fees, while local road maintenance should be funded with local taxes, property taxes, or assessments on residents within the areas served by local roads. So I'm sure this is a prickly topic for some individuals. So we wanted to take this opportunity to ask whether or not the public agrees with the findings of the task force back in 2013. So let me pull that up and we'll take the quiz. Yep, thanks. Sorry, folks. I'm going to get better and faster at this. I promise, eventually. Okay, here we go. Here's the QR code. I think we're passing it around the audience, so I'm going to jump into the survey right now. Do you agree with the road task force finding? And this is on a rank scale between strongly disagree all the way up to strongly agree. First finding was regional roads should be funded differently than local roads. Second finding was use of a county-wide revenue source to fund local roads outside of a town or GID would be double taxation for town and GID residents. Do you agree with that statement? Last finding, regional maintenance should be funded with regional taxes. Local maintenance should be funded with local taxes. All right, we'll give it 30 more seconds. We need the Jeopardy theme music. Is that what you were just humming? Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, I will not be humming. I do not have a good singing voice. Okay. All right. I think we've leveled off in terms of our number of respondents. Oh, we just jumped to 22. So we have 22 individual respondents, 23 now who have responded. Most individuals are indicating that they strongly agree with the findings of the task force from 2013. So there you have it. All right. Yes, basically nothing's changed. Deja vu all over again. And once again, we thank the task force for the important work they do. That was a huge time commitment by those residents. And it was significant to shape the policy decisions and actions of the county commission moving forward from that point. So let me go now into the presentation. We are here. So what are the recommendations? I told you they made findings, so what did they suggest we do from there? As I mentioned, the task force recommended that we adopt a policy of using regional revenue for preventative road maintenance of the regional network of collector roads and local revenue for preventative maintenance of local roads. They also allocated for additional funding from the general fund sufficient to fund preventative road maintenance of collector roads, thus avoiding a tax increase at that time in 2013. So that I'm clear, they recommended that the county commission make the decision to shift general fund revenue to roads so that a tax increase could be avoided. They also recommended to establish one or more county road maintenance districts in areas outside of the town and GID boundaries to basically fund local road maintenance. They also suggested that we continue to look for ways to shift existing revenue sources to road maintenance. And the county commission did take action on this. Beginning, I think was it 2014? Yes. The county successfully shifted general fund funding. Over time, that amount grew to $1 million annually to road maintenance, and a shift of general fund revenue continued to occur through 2022. However, the general fund can no longer support a transfer out for a variety of reasons, which we have discussed as part of our budget hearing process. But one of the biggest lifts that the general fund took on that did not exist at the time that the road task force did its work was the creation of our stormwater fund. The board made the decision, I believe it was in 2018 or 2019, to begin diverting $1 million annually, and that amount is $1.1 million currently, to our stormwater program. That made general fund dollars less available for other purposes, including road maintenance. We have a variety of competing priorities, including ongoing operation of the county and the rising expense of those ongoing costs. But I encourage members of the public to go back and view our presentation. We go into detail how county dollars are being spent and allocated, and we explain what funding is available, where, and why the commission made the decisions you did.
I would suppose that it could possibly be argued that by shifting that money over to the stormwater program is assisting in helping us with storm mitigation that will ultimately reduce our wear and tear on the roads. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it probably is fair, and I'll look to Mr. Erb to jump in if he wants to add. There's quite a bit of road operation related to the work done adjacent to the roads. Drainage infrastructure has an impact on road maintenance. How we handle water in severe storms will have an impact. Mr. Erb told you that weather events significantly impact the condition of roads. So yes, generally I would agree with you, Commissioner. Mr. Erb, do you have anything else to say?
Commissioner Gardner, you're correct. It does help, and it's the long-term projects that are really going to help out. If we don't have the overtopping of the road during a flood event, that's where the most damage comes for the structural section of roadway, including the shoulders and the roadside ditch. So if we can eliminate that type of flooding, it would definitely help out the road department.
All right. Slide. Oh, it's on. Okay, thank you. I did add this slide because I anticipated generally we would get questions about, well, where are general fund dollars going? So very briefly, I will just cover. The total amount of funding that we receive for the general fund is $67.5 million. How we spend those dollars is broken down by percentages here. They include $31.2 million for salaries, $16.5 million for benefits, $14.8 million in services and supplies to keep the lights on to do all the work that we do. And then additionally, we transfer out of the general fund currently $2.2 million for our first bond payment in this fiscal year on the Justice Center, $1.1 million for the Stormwater Fund, approximately $500,000 for the library, $600,000 for senior services support, and about $340,000 for sheriff use of 911 and radio public safety infrastructure user fees. So that gives you an overview of all of the dollars and where they're flowing in the general fund. And again, I would encourage the public to go back and watch our budget presentations. We talk about how we cannot shift or save enough dollars in the general fund to pay for roads in Douglas County. So the road funding task force recommended districts recommended creating one or more new local road maintenance districts to fund maintenance of county maintained roads. Road districts could be created under NRS 318. The revenue potential would depend on the size of the district. We would want to make sure that whatever revenue we collected in these individual road district areas, that we turned around and invested in road maintenance in that specific area. Estimates range from anywhere between $100,000 to $4 million a year could be collected through the creation of these road districts. As a result of this recommendation, the County Commission in 2019 did adopt an ordinance, Ordinance 2018-1531. The reason why it has a 2018 date and not a 2019 date is because this subject matter started, the conversation started in 2018, but it wasn't adopted until 2019. It specifically pertains to drainage and roadway facilities and requires the creation of a GID, or if a project is going to happen, they could either create a GID, create an HOA that would be responsible for the roads, or join an existing GID or town if they happen to be adjacent to one. But basically, the ordinance says the county will not offer or accept the roads if they're offered for dedication to Douglas County without the creation of either a road district or joining an existing district. That does not address those roads that we have not accepted for maintenance in the past. It only addresses new, or something that is now offered for dedication to the county.
So let me ask, we have two, I can think of two. Virginia Ranch, where it's going to have roads within that district, right, or within that development. So we would not accept those because those are being built. What's the process there? So the developer themselves can create this to because it's not going to be a GID, can create this, and I don't know whether the town of Gardnerville is going to be involved in that. Okay, so they are. I got.
Yeah, they would
okay.
be annexed into
Okay.
the town of Gardnerville.
And also, I guess the new one, Park Haven on Stephanie, and also the one in the Ranchos now also. So those will be picked up by those GIDs.
If it's not, maybe a simpler way to answer your question is if it's new and it's not going to be picked up by an existing town or GID, this ordinance requires them to either create an HOA for the maintenance of drainage and roads or to petition the county to create a road district.
But we're not adding road maintenance to our agenda.
No. And again, this was a bold step forward by the county commission at the time, and we appreciate the work done there. But we do still have a gap in roads that have been constructed that we have not agreed to maintain. Okay. Diesel fuel tax was discussed by the road task force. Obviously, you mentioned, Commissioner, that diesel fuel is not currently collected and could be. NRS 373 allows the county by an ordinance adopted by a 2/3 majority of this board to enact a diesel tax, or if approved by a majority of registered voters. The potential revenue for 5 cents would be $300,000 annually based on fuel sales reports in Douglas County. So that is the study, the work that has been done. It's based on actual fuel sales in Douglas County, diesel fuel sale. So there has been board action and voter action on this. In 2019, the statute was allowed that would allow rural counties to adopt this diesel tax. The county commission in 2020 authorized the county to initiate a ballot question for voter approval. This question failed by more than 60%. Utility operator fee was also discussed by the task force. The task force general feedback and recommendation was that the county divert existing revenue sources and not pursue new taxes. But we did look at utility operator fee. Douglas County currently charges 2.5%. The state allows a maximum of 5%. The county can increase that amount by no more than 1% every 2 years by adopting an ordinance. The revenue potential for a 1% increase would be $800,000 per year.
Are we talking things like Southwest Gas, NV Energy,
So anyone who
AT&T?
operates, yes, anyone who operates a utility within Douglas County. And what that would look like for our residents is it would be a utility operator fee directly passed through on the resident's bill. So it is a tax.
Doesn't have much correlation with use of roads, but it is an avenue for us.
It is one potential resource, yes.
So this is
Oh,
paid
Phil
by the
Whitaker.
residents, I'm sorry, this is paid by the residents, not by the utility.
So, I think I think most residents will tell you that they're gonna see it on their bill and they pay their bill. So the utility does make the payment to us, but the residents are paying the utility. Is that a fair answer to that question? Okay.
Phil Whitaker, Director of Public Works, for the record. Commissioner Hales, to your comment that it doesn't pertain to the roads, utility operator fees, these fees are actually paid for the access essentially to the roadside easements for the placement of utility transmission lines, whether that be gas lines, cable lines, the electrical lines and things of that. And one of the major sources of deterioration of roads, as John had pointed out earlier, was when utilities have to underground and saw cut roads or do roadside work or work in the pavement itself. So there is a direct correlation actually between utilities operating in our county and the road network.
I don't know if I call that direct, but I do appreciate the additional information.
Well, by definition, utilities are installed in our road easements. 100% of the, I mean, there's very few road utilities that will be cutting across private property.
So can I, before you had mentioned that you have a moratorium on cutting for 3 years, or it's not allowed. So I'm guessing the alternate to that is boring at that point. Is there any benefit to simply requiring boring? And what would be the cost of that versus a cut? Just roughly.
For them, boring usually takes a lot more time. There's more risk for them to hit other utilities when they're boring. So they prefer to do the trench. They're required to do the boring if their pavement's less than 3 years old, yes. And that's a county policy that we have that can be changed to 5 years, no-cut policy, if that's something.
I guess that's what I'm asking, is if it's worth looking into that to keep saw cutting, because I think we've all experienced the chunks in the roads when they saw cut. They're never flush when they're done. So I imagine that's going to cause additional deterioration over time, which to your point makes complete sense. So I'm just wondering if maybe that's something we should look further into, is maybe adjusting that policy and maybe eliminating that completely. But I don't know what the cost is, and I know my construction friends are probably screaming at their screens right now. So that's why I'm asking whether or not that's worth looking into or not. But if you're saying there's additional risk of, whacking other utilities, and maybe it's not, that's kind of what I'm asking, is that worth maybe looking into?
For me, I would definitely like to see a no-cut policy extended, because my department maintains the road. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
So Madam Chair, the Road Task Force also looked at and evaluated sales tax. So there is a variety of sales tax options, and we'll talk about the mechanisms for each. The first is NRS 377B allows the creation of an infrastructure sales tax. I believe this is one of the ones that Carson City has enacted. I'm looking at, thank you. So this would require an ordinance adopted by a 2/3 majority of the Board of County Commissioners, or a vote of the people. It doesn't require it, but it could also be enacted after the board put out a request for a vote of the people, but you could just take a 2/3 majority vote on this. The revenue potential for a 1/4-cent sales tax, based on what we know, because we have PALS. Remember, PALS is a 1/4-cent sales tax that we have in this county already. We know how much that revenue generates each year. So based on that, we know that this would be about 2.9 million in additional revenue. Additionally, NRS 377 allows the creation of a public transit and road maintenance sales tax. Requires an ordinance adopted. This does require a vote of the people. Revenue potential, it could be as much as half a cent of sales tax, which could generate up to 5.8 million annually. Just because the law allows for the entire half cent does not mean that a half cent would have to be pursued. It could be the quarter cent instead.
Can you, I'm confused from what we were talked about before compared to what was stated today. Of the different counties in Nevada, what percentage or what numbers utilize one or both of those sales tax?
We'll show you on another slide. Yep. Thanks for the question. So based on a sample size of 20,000 credit card transactions, because we got asked how much proportionally would our residents be paying on a sales tax increase, we looked at a sample size of credit card transactions. We estimate that about 21% of taxes collected in the Carson Valley are paid for by visitors. The rest are paid for by residents. At the lake, that percentage is higher. We have more visitors at the lake, so that makes sense. About 29% of the taxes collected at the lake are paid for by visitors. The rest are paid for by residents. This is sales tax rates by county. This is every county in the state and what they charge in sales tax. Douglas currently charges 7.1%, Lyon charges 7.1%, Carson 7.6%, Story 7.6%. That gives you an idea of the comparatives in the region. And I see Commissioner whipping out his cell phone. On the next slide, we will show you what makes up that 7.1% by each of these counties. And here it is. So Carson City's 7.6% includes a quarter cent sales tax, actually it's a 0.1.25 for that infrastructure line item that you asked about, Commissioner. Churchill County also has a portion of sales tax going to public roads, dedicated specifically to public roads and infrastructure. Let me back up. Carson City also has a component of sales tax going to public roads in addition to the V&T pieces that Mr. Ricker explained and the infrastructure piece. Clark County, I want to see if there's anything I want to call to your attention. We'll talk about this one in a conversation about stormwater at a future workshop. Uh, 377B, so they didn't enact an entire quarter cent sales. Clark County, I'm sorry, 377B. There's different subcomponents of that particular statute that allows you to enact taxes for different purposes.
So that doesn't go to roads, but the one 377A does?
Yes, regional transportation does, yes. Feel free, Phil, to speak up if you have anything. Elko has one for infrastructure. Lyon has one for infrastructure. Nye has public roads. Pershing infrastructure. White Pine public roads. But this is the current tax rates and how each of those are divvied
So all
up.
but three, Douglas County, Story, and what are the other two that you said that do not? use
That
public
do
roads?
not. Lander, Lincoln, who?
Lander and Lincoln, okay.
Landon, Lincoln.
Landon, Lincoln, Story, and Douglas.
Story does have a component, though. Story has, no, they don't. I'm sorry. No, they don't. But they do utilize some of their sales tax funding for road maintenance. It's not specifically collected for the purpose of roads. So let me explain that a little bit better. So what that means, if you do pass a sales tax increase for the stated purpose of infrastructure under 377B, you have to spend those dollars for the stated purpose. So it can only be spent on infrastructure. If you collect it for public roads, it has to be spent on public roads. If you collect it for flood control, it has to be spent on flood control. There are some general sales tax provisions that you can collect them and spend them in more general ways. But the pieces that we're talking about here would be specifically limited to be spent on infrastructure, including roads. It could also be spent on other types of infrastructure within the county. If we charge it specifically for public roads, we have to use it for public roads. Hopefully that was clear. Yes, and Ms. Lewis has something she wants to add.
Thank you. Kathy Lewis for the record. There are 13 counties listed up here. So the other 4 counties do not have any other tax besides their state, besides the minimum sales tax. So there are 4 counties that just have the 6.35% sales tax and not an additional tax. So when you're going through the other counties, there's 3 or 4 more.
He's so lost. What do you mean?
So the difference, there are counties that are not listed on the second slide that are included on this map. Yes.
I
Yes,
see.
so you'll be able to tell, yes.
And what do they do? They use just a sales tax and they use a portion of it for the transportation?
They may or may not use it for transportation. They collect sales tax, but they don't charge anything specifically for roads or infrastructure.
Charge a sales tax?
Yes, every county charges sales tax, yes.
Every county charges the base rate, the standard is 6.825%. That's the minimum sales tax rate in the state of Nevada. And then through these various NRS measures, a county can opt in to increase that sales tax above the minimum. And that's what you're looking at here. So you're looking at tax rates like Douglas County, the quarter cent that we have, it takes us from the minimum of 6.8 up to the 7.1.
So the other 4 are at the minimum?
They're all at the minimum,
So
yes.
how do we know how their roads?
We did not look at them.
We didn't look at everyone, we just looked at the ones in this region. Okay.
Just to get a sense of where we're going, what slide out of 100 is this? And do we have another survey?
So this is the last slide in this section. We probably have 20 more slides after this. And I believe we have 1 or 2 more survey questions. 2. Okay. And this, after this slide might be a natural breaking point if you wanted a 5-minute break. So county gas tax, we mentioned the county had the option to implement up to 9 cents, which we have done. Here's the history on this. The board action on this to increase it by 5 cents up to the 9 cents, per gallon, was through a vote of this county commission. It resulted in us being able to bond for $12 million approximately. And we have been able to invest as a result of that significantly in regional roads. Prior to that investment, the PCI score, the pavement condition on regional roads, was much lower. But this increase in taxes allowed us to do a lot more work on regional roads. And our debt service payments are $170,000 a year for that bond, and that bond will be paid off in 2036.
So some of the public comments that I received are mentioning that this expires, a 5% increase. It does not expire.
To our knowledge, it does not expire, no. We received that question, and thank you, Commissioner, for reminding me of that. I'm not sure why that individual thought that maybe there was an expiration here, but to our knowledge, we can find nothing indicating that there's an expiration on this. We went back to the original ordinance to see if it was stated in the ordinance that was adopted by the commission, and it was not. There was no sunset provision. Okay. Madam Chair, as I mentioned, this is a natural breaking point if you wanted to do a 5-minute break, or we can push through. $20 slides, so I'd say we're probably 30 minutes.
All right, let's not take a break, but if anyone in the audience needs to get up, please feel free to do so, and board as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we talked about the history of the road task force in 2013 and all of the options that they looked at and considered and how much revenue that would generate. But there are other options available to the county that the task force did not look at, or at least it wasn't included in the task force report. So we can't find that they looked at it. Maybe they did, and they just didn't consider it significant. One of those is the construction tax. I alluded to that earlier. I mentioned that the county currently charges $500 per new construction home, and then also additionally 50 cents per square foot for commercial. This may be increased by a vote of the public. If it were increased, the revenue potential is doubled. For residential, it would be $150,000, commercial $120,000, a total combined of $270,000. What does doubling it look like? The statute allows for the county to increase this amount from $500 a home currently to $1,000 per new construction home, and also $1 per square foot for commercial. Again, this requires a vote of the public. The commission cannot enact this without the public agreeing. Gas tax indexing is also allowed in the statute. For a county of population less than 100,000 the voters must reauthorize indexing. There are counties that currently do indexing, Clark County, and it sunsets in 2026 from what we can find in Washoe County, also indexes. Indexing goes up by an average percentage of the consumer price index for the preceding 5 years. It's some interesting math that results in some additional revenue. It, again, as I mentioned, would have to be reauthorized by a vote of the public every 8 years. Okay.
I believe, going back to that slide, I believe that Clark County does have a bill before the state legislature right now to remove that sunset as of that expires in 2026.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
That's an important point, Commissioner. So Clark County and Washoe County have been specifically authorized by the state legislature to index. Everyone else has to go to a vote of the public in order to index. And we also, in addition to having to go to a vote of the public, we have to seek reauthorization for that every 8 years. When the state legislature enacted legislation to allow Clark County to do that, they put in that sunset provision for 2026. In 2016, there was a general election ballot question on that. We did put this to a vote of the people, and that question failed by more than 60%. Other funding options. Impact fees have been discussed by a number of jurisdictions and make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. However, impact fees do not make sense in Douglas County, and let me explain. Couple of things. Impact fees can only be used to meet new development needs, not existing needs. So a backlog of road maintenance, we could not utilize revenue from an impact fee. In order to arrive at an impact fee, the county must do some math to figure out how much infrastructure is needed to support the new development, divide that by the number of units, and that's how you arrive at the impact fee. Credits must be given to a developer if they contribute for the cost of the infrastructure. I'll give you an example. Over certain periods of time, the county has negotiated for developers to contribute infrastructure. It could be 4 lanes of Muller Parkway in certain sections of Muller. That amount would have to be discounted from the total amount of infrastructure required to support that new development and could not be then included in an impact fee. I told you the cost must relate to the demands caused by that development, but also construction must start within 5 years of those dollars being collected, and they must be spent where they are collected, and they must be spent within 10 years. Our growth management ordinance significantly hinders our ability to use impact fees. And that is not commentary by staff saying the growth management ordinance is a bad thing. I am not saying that. I am saying that we cannot collect through impact fees enough dollars over time to build within 5 years the amount of infrastructure required to support the development. Hopefully that all made sense. I talked very quickly. All right. Requiring a developer to pay for or new construction to pay for existing deficiency in your infrastructure roads network will not survive legal challenges. This has been debated in the courts, and the court said you cannot use revenue generated from impact fees for existing needs or existing deficiencies. Room tax. Now, this is the section of this presentation where what I'm about to say might be a little bit controversial because these ideas, to my knowledge, have never been explored. I want to make it abundantly clear, staff is just trying to give the board the complete context of all of your options. We are not making recommendations at this time. Let's talk about room tax for a second. So, the board could, hypothetically speaking, allow VHRs in the valley. Currently, VHRs are allowed at the lake. That would result in additional TLRT tax being collected for the purpose of transportation. Likely that would result in somewhere between $75,000 to $100,000 each year. I am assuming a lot of things here. I had to pull some number. How many VHRs might we have in the valley? So I assumed 200. The reason why I used 200 as the basis is it was somewhere, my recollection was somewhere between 200 to 300 was the cap discussed by the VHR task force back when I was working with them. So I thought it might be appropriate to assume the lower of the two numbers. Additionally, with regard to room tax, the existing transient lodging license tax portion of room tax could be raised an additional 1% in the valley. It is at the maximum allowed in the NRS at the lake. This additional 1% could be solely allocated towards transportation and roads. The revenue potential for this is $270,000 combined. Additionally, there is potential to reallocate 1% in TLLT tax that is used for economic vitality and parks and recreation assets to transportation and roads. However, it's important to note this would have a huge negative impact on parks and recreation and would require parks and recreation programming and services to be reduced by as much as 16%. The potential revenue, if this money was reallocated by the county commission, the potential generated is broken down here. The combined revenue potential for all room tax options is $1.6 million annually. The most significant portion of that, $1.1 million, would be a $1.1 million hit on Parks and Recreation. So let me show you what that looks like. This is the Parks and Recreation budget. $7 million total flows into Parks and Recreation to support all of the wonderful services that are provided by Parks and Recreation, in addition to the parks assets that we are required to maintain. Salaries and wages are 2.6, benefits 1.1, services and supplies 3.2. A $1.1 million hit to this budget would be significant and would be felt by this community. And you have received a presentation about all of the wonderful work that Community Services does, and we discussed this matter in great detail as part of our budget presentations. I would encourage any member of the public to go back and view those presentations. I think it's also important to note, while I said that we could reallocate existing revenue collected in room tax, I told you it's as much as 1.1 million. It's important to look at the ordinance that was passed at the time that decision was made by the county commission to collect that tax and what they explained to the public at that time that that tax would be used for. What we told the public that that tax would be used for at that time in a business impact statement is that 1%, the $1.1 million, would be used to fund the county's economic vitality efforts and to repair, replace, improve, acquire, and protect Douglas County parks and recreation assets and facility reserves, adequate to operate safe and functioning parks and recreation facilities and equipment. The passage of the proposed ordinance at that time, and this was in 2010, would directly increase the fees paid to Douglas County and would result in additional money available to Douglas County's Department of Parks and Recreation for the purpose mentioned above, and the Tahoe Douglas Visitors Authority and the Carson Valley Visitors Authority for the promotion of tourism as mentioned above. Because we stated that this money was collected for this specific purpose, we cannot then use it for another purpose unless we pass an ordinance that says we're going to do it differently. This would require another business impact statement, and we would need to hear from the community their thoughts on this. But I cannot emphasize enough, reallocating this funding would have a negative impact on the ability of community services to do the wonderful work that they do.
The other thing that I can see on that, Ms. Davidson, is that those two entities drive tourism in our community, which has residual effects on other income that we receive from the county, sales taxes and room taxes themselves, with visitors coming in. So, yeah, I would struggle to change that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to questions 7 and 8, which I believe are our last interactive questions for our audience. So of all of the we are asking the public to weigh in order of preference on those options. So you have that information. So let me get to that real quick. So question 7 and 8 is here. Thank you. Whoever's got the, that's awesome. All right, and we'll jump into the question, or the rating, I mean. For those who are following along at home, we have the Jeopardy theme song playing in the room. So again, for a reminder, the options we're asking you to rank are establish one or more county road maintenance districts in areas outside of towns and GIDs to fund preventative maintenance of local roads. Board implement diesel fuel tax, $300,000 annually. Reminder, this was a failed ballot question. Board increase utility operator fee by 1%, which would be about $800,000 annually. And now the deck's been shuffled. I think you guys can figure it out. We'll see where we land here.
Ms. Davidson, I didn't get throughout our testimony unless I missed it. How much money do we need annually to be able to adequately at least keep the roads going?
So that was in the staff report, sir, but thank you for the question. I guess I missed a slide. So staff's findings in the staff report were that we needed $6 million additionally annually to fund the backlog of road maintenance. And I believe we broke that into $3 million for regional and $3 million for local, I believe. Yes. A combination of these things would get us a lot closer. Yes.
But then we're also not considering some of the things like that money goes to tourism and economic vitality. Could we not direct those departments to focus on more tourism opportunities that are also going to increase our existing funding sources? I know that, I mean, we have a huge bucket that we've always, the narrative has been nothing's enough. We need to put, there are only drops in the bucket, but we have to start putting drops in the bucket. It's not, we don't have, we've said today it was not a solution. So I feel like some of these things, I'm really appreciating this presentation because I'm understanding even better what I had just a tiny grasp of. But there's not solutions other than taxation, and this area is not going to support taxation very well. So that's why I'm thinking, where else can we direct? What can we do? What can we look at that's going to give us some more bang? So even though we don't take away from community services, but maybe we have them that are using some of that economic vitality to maybe find ways to increase our tourism, to increase that tax. And I don't know. So that's just kind of what I was hoping was going to come out of this. So am I a slide off on that too, or?
No.
No, okay.
No, certainly we can have conversations about partnering with others to increase visitors and sales tax. That's an important discussion for the county commission and a policy consideration for this board. We have talked about the impact of visitors on this community. There are pros and cons to doing that. So definitely it's something we can continue to discuss and explore with the visitors authorities.
The other thing, Bill Rutger, for the record, that you'd be looking at with that is really tourism is, the funding is really through the lodgers taxes, the room tax in its different forms. So the question that really we have to look at for the community or for the areas is the issue of vacancies. If room capacity is filled, there is no, I mean, there's not an opportunity there, short of what Jennifer said was increasing the number of VHRs or figuring out how to increase the number of room availability throughout the year. So there might be opportunities there, but that would be the real question is what's the current vacancy rate at within our region that would be untapped resource or untapped revenue.
So
I would hope that we take an opportunity to really push this particular issue out to the voters over the next several weeks to really get a buy-in or an understanding of exactly where our residents fall on these different things, more so than just those folks that may be in this room.
yeah, we will absolutely do some additional public outreach on this. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
You may have this coming up, but what if we reduce expenses? In other words, just turn some roads into gravel.
Do you want to comment on that, Mr. Erb?
While that is an option,
Before you go bad,
And
I was going to recommend that too, because
there is counties.
there's roads that we can't touch in Johnson Lane because of the grindings. There's no, and you can fill in. It almost seems like we could pull the grindings and go back to blading them and just say we've enjoyed the grindings for 15, 20 years because it was meant as a benefit, and now it's kind of a hindrance now. So I know that may not be popular, but it's also a lot easier to reblade a dirt road, gravel road. But go ahead, but I don't want
yeah.
you to be on an island.
Well, it's
Like
never a
Chairwoman.
popular option to go in reverse from a paved or grindings road to a gravel road. It is a procedure that's been done in quite a few areas across the country. To just grade a road is a lot cheaper than doing a slurry seal, chip seal, and reconstruction over the course of a 30-year period. So that is an
I guess
option,
my-
but then
okay.
then you have to look at the other effects that does to the county, which is air quality and dust control.
My observation here is that since we have such a small sampling, just one new answer shuffles the whole board here. So
Yeah, so I just, while we were having a question and answer period, I moved to the second question. So let me back up for just a second. So I do want to specifically call out for the record that listed among the options were board initiate ballot question put to a vote of the people, and or board reduce programs and services supported by the general fund, redirect funding. So those were options available on here. We didn't just stack it like you have no choice but taxes, vote for tax. And then to continue this board initiate ballot question, we asked the second question, which is if the board puts it to a vote of the people, which ballot question should the board initiate in order of preference? So I would encourage those who are participating to flip to this next question. There should be an arrow over option. Let us know if you need help. And please do weigh what your preference is. Among the options here is instead of putting it to a vote of the people, take action, don't wait for a vote. And another option is do nothing, no additional funding is needed.
I guess, I mean, while people are taking this, I, especially in those areas that are not paying local road taxes or any money for local roads specifically, so they're outside towns and GIDs, they may rather have gravel roads than pay a tax. I think that's a legitimate choice, and I would like to give them that choice.
There would still be the initial investment cost of grinding those roads down, but point taken, Commissioner. Okay, we're in the home stretch. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Erb for future considerations and final takeaways.
One thing to keep in mind with road construction is the cost has escalated quite a bit, especially since 2020 during the COVID year. We kind of follow for pricing the National Highway Construction Cost Index, and that's the red line, and it's compared to the other indexes, and you can see that it's gone up quite a bit. In fact, the inflation for labor material costs had increased 38% between 2022 and the first half of 2023, and has increased 59% since the start of 2021. And while we're not in, the county's not in the process of building highways, it definitely affects the prices of what we do, because material cost is the same for us as it is for NDOT. And for example, in 2018, I was paying $62 per ton of hot mix asphalt to do patching. Now it's $137 per ton, so it's more than doubled. Other considerations that need to be taken in by the board is how the master plan update, growth, and changes in the master or in traffic patterns, how that can change the needs for transportation projects. Added travel lanes will add to the cost of maintenance. Intersection safety improvements, whether it's a roundabout or signal when they go in, there's an additional cost for maintenance there. And new regional roads. We have them in our master plan, but regional roads, they come with a cost. We have to maintain them, we have to snowplow them, and additional miles of road would mean we'll need additional staff, more equipment, depending on how much more is approved. And this is also pointed out in accepting the current non-maintained roads. If we were to accept those roads, we'd be spread out even thinner, and our current roads that we do maintain would see inefficient maintenance on them. The other thing to consider is we do have a very aging road maintenance equipment. In here I have some pictures of our belly dump, our paver, our dump trucks. And I'd like to point out that Douglas County does not have covered storage for our equipment, which slows our operations down, especially during snowplowing events. When the guys come in at 4 in the morning to try to beat the school buses, they have to get all the snow off the trucks first. The sand pile is exposed. We have to, the sand doesn't spread as evenly as it should. So there's other costs involved in road maintenance, just with our facilities and maintenance yard.
Do you want me to take this one or you got it?
Yeah, you can
This
take
was
this
a last minute addition. I had to get to 100. We were at 99. And I wanted to leave us on a high note. So I'm being a little bit sarcastic. So future considerations, we've spent almost this entire presentation focusing on 189 miles of paved roads. We are still responsible for maintaining 43 miles of grinding roads, which we have no way of measuring their current condition and no current plan for funding that. Gravel roads, 9.6 miles, again, no way of measuring their condition and no current plan for funding that. And we have definitely not accepted 189 miles of roads that are not either to our standard or for some reason or another we have not accepted. And we have no plan for that. So, as I mentioned, just overall, this is an incredibly complex matter. And hopefully today gave you a little bit more insight into everything we're looking at when we tell you we need additional road funding and why, and gave you a little bit of a preview of the options that we might explore in future conversations. With that, Madam Chair, we're prepared to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you. Let's keep our questions brief so we can hear from the public. I just have one super quick question. I assume most of the roads not accepted for maintenance are local roads.
That is correct.
And do the people who live on these local roads, do they know? Do we communicate with them at all?
Most know. The ones that purchase homes don't always do their homework, and so we do get calls, and they're completely unaware that we don't go out and maintain their road.
And are you aware of any groups that are saying, oh, well, we better fix this, and so they're creating their own group to do something about it?
There are some individuals that call and ask if it's okay if they go buy some patch mix and fix their roads, or if they can hire a grader to come grade their roads. So yeah, there are those residents that do maintain their roads.
Okay, thanks. Other questions by commissioners?
Just a general statement, really. This has been an incredible workshop. Unfortunately, I don't know that we got to any resolution, okay, after 4 hours of discussion and presentation. So I really appreciate it. I think it's extremely important for our public to understand this. It's not that, and I think it's important for the public to understand, it's not that we don't recognize this as a problem. I just don't know that we have a solution. I wrote down a comment, as the cost of repair, maintenance, and construction increases, no one to my knowledge, and this is universal, not county-centric to Douglas County, to my knowledge, has yet come up with an answer to addressing the declining revenue in road and gas taxes to overcome this shortfall. And once again, and yet we have a federal government that continues to push mass transit, public transit, but at taxpayer expense. In other words, they want us to pay for it, but we don't have this, certainly, and it's more prevalent, I believe, in rural counties, and of the 3,000 counties we have in the United States, a far majority of those are rural counties. And so I certainly wish we had some solution, but as you're indicating, if we addressed every one of those possible answers, it still doesn't produce the amount of revenue, and it certainly won't keep up with the rising costs of doing that. And so I appreciate you, your office, and John especially. Every time I've called you from day one, you've answered my call, and and if you haven't been available, you've called me back as fast as you possibly could. But I just want the public to understand that this is extremely frustrating for me, and I'm sure the rest of the board.
Do you have a question?
Well, I was just going to add that if you did, the public, unless it changed on my brief break, their first option was a sales tax, which was 2.9 million, which you could be using for the regional fund. And then their second or third option was treating the local tax district for the local roads. So you would have enough money just from those two alone. But the problem is this, and I've been saying this from the time I've been on the board, and it's really hard for me to understand. I'm an outsider coming in 5 years ago to come into a community where you can't fund road safety when that should be one of the top priorities of the people that are representing you, the county commissioner, city council. And I know I probably have spoken too much about it and questioned it too much, considering the restraints that we have on it. But we have a county representatives owe it to our constituents to find the best way possible to put them in a safe environment. And roads is a big part of our environment, so we have to find a way to do it. And even if they don't like any new taxes going in there, I think we got to be able to fund them the way other counties do. That's why I keep asking the question, what are all these other smaller counties? I know Washoe and Clark are different, but how are the other counties funding this thing? And can we implement some of those things where maybe our residents would understand, hey, these other counties are having their residents pay these same type of fees. If we want to have safe roads, we need to provide those. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. Let's turn to the public, and I understand do we have microphones for the public, or we want to hear your questions? Oh, good. We have a microphone. Time for questions, and then we will have public comment. Thank you for your patience as we've gone through 100 slides.
John Sheridan for the record, Gardnerville Ranchos. Great job today. Thank you all for going over in depth. There's one thing I do want to bring up, and it's going to be a culmination of solutions, and it's probably going to be, required that this board take some action to approach the legislator, because the infrastructure funding isn't going to be achieved by the commissioner stepping up and actually moving funds from the general fund. So back in 2013, our Douglas County Transportation Task Force got our commissioners to step up and do priority-based budgeting, and they moved $1 million from the general fund. And I get it had something to do with Medicaid and indigent funding, and it was temporary, but they swallowed that bullet, and they moved that general fund. Since 2013, when we created this task force, our general fund revenues were $38 million. We've increased our revenues by 70% since we've already identified a huge problem. That increase of 70% has gone up from $38 million to $67 million. That's a $29 million increase in the general fund. And we're not even doing the priority-based budgeting of moving the million anymore from the general fund over. So I really think that that's not going to solve the complete problem that we've created here in Douglas County. And I appreciate...
Mr. Sheridan, do you have a question? Because we'll do public comment after this,
okay.
but we want questions now.
Well, I just would like to see the county take action to address it, conservatively. We are a conservative county, and I would also like the county to take action to approach the legislator and tell maybe the individuals that, I go around, we pay property taxes here in Nevada that are nil to nothing. And I know everybody comes from California or some other high tax state, but we really have to be honest with the people that we are serving. They want to come here and tell us they want more services and better roads, but we're not paying enough for property taxes either. We can't do enough to move money from the general fund. That is needed, but we can't do enough. So I hope this board, it's more of a comment, is going to approach the legislator, is going to look at other avenues and look at helping out our county manager, Jennifer Davidson. It's just not fair to her.
Thank you. Are there questions?
Regarding Glenn Linderman for the record, regarding road cutting, is there any plan so that when a new road is put in, culverts or something are put under the roads so that utilities could later be added? One of the issues in our particular neighborhood is that, like, DTS Fiber wants to come in and sell better internet access than Charter or Spectrum does, but they can't because they'd have to go through the expense of putting in culverts because we have underground utilities. If we had a general scheme for having culverts or utility raceways or whatever they call them, conduits, that could improve the ability to maintain the roads without road cutting. And so I'm wondering if there's any plan in that regard.
So the major road projects are usually advertised so that the utility companies have an option to come in with the contractor to do that type of work. Right now, we're working with DTS Fiber on them being able to come in on the new Moeller Parkway and getting their conduit in during construction. So there is some coordination on that. But the county's conduit's very expensive. We don't have enough money just to do the road. We're not going to supply crossings for utility companies that may or may not come in the future. That answers your question.
That's a good question. Thank you.
So yeah, a lot of those too, the utilities are under the road, like the sewer lines and the water lines. If you don't know where the development's going to be, because that comes up with me quite often, and we do these encroachment permits to connect, and we just did the one on Stephanie and Vicky. So that house, the water's on the other side of the street. So yeah, not knowing where these are coming, it's hard to plan. But yeah, I see what you're saying. It seems like every station, 100 feet, you could be having sleeves or something like that. But for connecting to the sewer and the water that's underneath there, you don't know what's coming. It'd be really difficult, I think. But I agree we're on the right track. And these are the kinds of comments I was hoping for, to see if we can start getting outside the box to start getting more solutions.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, about 10 or 15 slides back, there was one slide that talked about the $500 per unit fee on new construction, and I didn't see single-family residential. It was townhomes, apartments, condos, but single-family, is that also there as well? Okay, all right.
Yes, for the record, Jennifer Davidson, County Manager. Yes, it does include single-family residential. Yes.
And I'm glad you clarified that, because I had the same question when I saw that slide. I go, it's missing the single-family residences. But I suspected that the answer was going to be what.
Oh, hi. I kind of feel like I'm in the wrong room, but because mine is very personal. So I have a culvert that is plugged up. It's on Mossville Road. And, you know, it's like I'm asking, what are my options? Somebody came out from the county, and initially, I think they were seeing it only as a flood issue, because it was when we were having a lot of flooding. And I was told that, well, yours is no worse than other people's around here. But the problem is, it's stagnant water on the property. And I submitted I've got some pictures in there and everything on what I submitted for people who picked it up out there. I don't know what to do. I mean, I even said I would cost share up to $100,000 if they would fix it, because the road's going to have to be cut, the culvert has to be replaced. I don't know at this point if, I almost wanted to go in.
You know what? Why don't I invite you to have a conversation with Mr. Erb? Maybe not tonight, but
I would like
if you'll
that. That'd be fine. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, very much so.
We didn't
Yes.
get your notes.
Yeah. So I just need to have some way of.
Thank you for your attendance here.
And by the way, I want to say it's been very instructional, because I actually thought a lot of my taxes were going there, my property tax.
Are there other questions? Yes,
Please state your name before you ask your question. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Hi, my name is Lisa Hart, and my question is, Will Johnson Lane, you know, that's an area where I live. You know, the roads are made with grindings, and it's very sad, and John Erb is probably aware of that. My question is, when all the options are figured out for the funding for the roads, will the roads that are not accepted for maintenance be handled? can they be taken care of as well? I vote for the increased sales tax. If we have 7.1% here in Minden and Carson has 7.6%, why can't we go up to 7.6?
Thank you for your question. I'll take that one. My name is Jennifer Davidson, County Manager for the record. As Mr. Erb indicated, a majority of the roads that are not currently accepted for maintenance are local roads. And certainly it could be a policy consideration of this county commission to accept those roads for maintenance. I think ultimately it likely would be staff's recommendation that a road district be created to maintain any specific roads that are not currently accepted for maintenance. If we were going to look at maintaining those, I think ultimately that would be staff's recommendation to the commission from a policy standpoint. I think it's consistent also with the position the county has taken in adopting that ordinance that requires any new development that offers new infrastructure for dedication to either be part of an existing GID or town, or to petition the county to create a district. Hopefully that answers your question, and I'd be happy to speak to you more about it after.
And to add to that too, if we do take all those on, that is going to be a whole nother logistical issue because John's not going to want to do one lane in Johnson, one out in TRE, and one on Route. They're going to want to do them together for efficiency. So how we decide which area goes first at that time would be another topic of discussion. So there's a lot of things when you get to that, should we get to that level? But that's down the road. We won't have to worry about that too. But I'm going on the record of a lottery. So, or taking the high card out of a deck for somebody representing each district. So anyway.
Are there any other, yes, Mr. Wenholt?
Hello, Adam Wenholt for the record, resident of Minden. I couldn't help but notice, this was hours ago, in the presentation that the county maintains a portion of the Dresslerville Tribal Colony's roads, at least according to your map. What is the relationship that the county has with the tribe in any sort of funding or maintenance or whatever?
There's a lot that goes into working with the tribe. We do minimal maintenance on our local roads.
Awkwardly craning your neck.
Such as street sweeping, some snow plowing. It's a difficult area to work in, but we do our best to try to maintain a relationship with them.
No funding.
We, as far as like federal funding for tribal roads, there's no funding coming from them.
Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, then I'm going to open for public comment. We welcome you to come up to the podium and take up to 3 minutes and share your wisdom.
Thank you. I'm Eric Nilsson. First, just going to speak as Eric Nilsson, not as town manager. I came here 13 years ago from a well-funded big city in Arizona to be the county engineer. And one of the first calls I got was from a gentleman out, I think it was Sorensen Lane in the Ranchos area, and he had a road problem. I went out there and I had done some research and I realized that no one maintained his road. And I didn't even know it was a possibility. I didn't know that was an option. Coming from Arizona, no, we owned and maintained the roads. And I remember just talking to him and I said, yeah, no, sorry, no one maintains your road. And he said, how does that happen? I said, I don't know how that happens. And I just look at these homes, for instance, in Johnson Lane on Skyline Ranch, where the developer put in a real road, a legit road, and it's a local road, and there is no hope realistically of that ever getting reconstructed. And these are $1 million homes, $1.5 million homes up there, and they're going to be on gravel roads at some point. And I don't know that many people do know. When I personally bought my home, I would only buy in Minden or one of the GIDs because I knew that was the only hope to have a paved road in front of my house. So I don't think people know it. They buy these big homes, they go to these places, and I don't think they recognize or realize the deficiency that there is. So if there is an option, I understand I understand fully the deficit the county is in, and I hope it can be maintained, because realistically, when people would call us county engineer, I knew that I could not give them an answer that, hey, this will get taken care of or this will be fixed. I knew it was just going to be, sorry, there's no funding for that. So however the commission can address it or increase funding, I recognize it and would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCallop.
James McCallop. I'm on the Planning Commission, but I'm not speaking in that capacity. I agree with the idea that we need to create the road districts. We have people in towns and GIDs that pay taxes to support their roads. We have people in the county that don't. We have to start with leveling that out. Then I think we'd probably need to look at a sales tax increase in order to get additional funding for the connector roads. Thank you.
I like it. Right to the bottom line. All right, welcome.
Welcome again. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'd like to compliment staff. That was a great presentation, it really was. I've had several dealings with staff, and you've got a top-notch staff. They really do a good job, and I've had some really good opportunities to discuss with them. I'd like to make a suggestion and then an observation. First, a suggestion would be a lot of discussion today about utilities and the cost of utilities and the amount that they damage with roads. And another possibility might be, rather than increasing the tax, would be to, and I don't know if this is a state law that would allow this, but create a utility ordinance that would require, when the utilities pull a permit, that they pay a fee at that time based upon the amount of impact they may have to the road. It might be by square foot, by length, by whatever. Rather than just paying a minimal fee for our inspection, things like that, you'd pay based on how much of the road you're going to damage. And then that wouldn't go to it would go through, when they make their rate case, they get that money back at that time, but it wouldn't be a direct thing to the individual property owners, I guess. The other thing I would like to mention is that Fremont Road, which is really the extension of East Valley south of Johnson Lane, the last 2 or 3 miles, is a local road. It's a local road on the county's master plan, and I just wonder how that is considered. If you're the maintenance of local roads, there's been a lot of discussion about that. Is this treated differently? Do they fund it the same way that they fund regular regional collectors and things like that, like Johnson Lane is, things like that? It's really not designed for trucks. It's being beat to hell by the truck traffic. And there's a lot of impact to those residents, et cetera. I guess one solution, although there's no funding for this either, would be the proper extension of East Valley down to Vicky. I understand that the plans have been drawn up for that road, and there's no funding, of course, for it, but the right-of-way's been dedicated and plans have been drawn, and that might be one thing that needs to be brought up on the priority list. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are good points. Welcome, Mr. Hales.
Well, the point I want to make today, Jim Hales, is there's no 3-minute clock on our discussion after this. I just want to remind you of that. My name is Jim Hales. I speak solely as Jim Hales. My wife and I do not necessarily agree on all political issues, So if what I say today is not in accordance with your thoughts and how things ought to be, come talk to me and not her. I moved here 30 years ago, and when I moved here, I loved Douglas County then, I love Douglas County now. The thing about Douglas County, one of the things I love is you can live in such a different environment in the same county. You can live at the lake, an alpine environment. You can live on the foothills looking out over the valley. You can live in downtown Minden, where I live, has streets, curbs, gutters, street lights, things that I like. That's why we ended up in Westwood. You can live in Johnson Lane. You can have immediate access to BLM property with horses and with your ATVs. You pick where you want to live. When I moved here 30 years ago, there was a clear choice, and I think the choice isn't much different now. Do I want to live in a place with higher taxes to maintain the roads and the curb and the gutter, or do I want to live out somewhere where I can be closer to nature? I am, years ago, and this was 2 decades ago, and I think it was Kelly Kite, I don't remember, but he was sitting in Mr. Tarkini's chair when I was here, and we were talking about taxes and roads. And Mr. Kite can excuse me if he wasn't the one who said it, but he said something that was very profound and stuck with me decades later. Great thing about Douglas County is your taxes are so low. But the thing about your low taxes is you have poorly controlled roads. You can't have both. And if you're going to raise taxes, you can raise the taxes. But I got to tell you, after being here for 30 years, unless you're talking about a 911 surcharge, direct public safety, your efforts to raise taxes are going to get shot down. The only way to do this is to get community buy-in, and the only way to do that is to go out and pass some type of referendum and ask the people to agree. Or you do like a previous commission that approved the tax, there really weren't that many more taxes, but the construction of a community center, which we all loved, all those commissioners voted for it and got voted off because they didn't follow the will of the people. So if you're going to raise the taxes, then do it, with the group of people. Does that mean I have 20 seconds left? 30 seconds left. It seems like to me the only fair way to do this. I know not everybody agreed because I read the poll. But those of us who live in a taxing district to pay for our local roads, we paid for those roads. And if we're going to impose if the people in Johnson Lane want a better road, good. But they got to pay the taxes for it. There's no other way to do it. When the chips went down, when the shavings went down, people in Johnson Lane loved it. Now they have expectations, which was never the intent when they put it down. More later.
Mr. Hales, there is something profound about this chair. I just wanted you to know that.
Any other public comment on this agenda item? All right, I will close public comment and thank all of you for sticking with it through the end of this presentation, for sharing your thoughts, and for going out and sharing what you've learned with your friends and neighbors, and hopefully generating more interest, more input. It was never intended that we would actually make a decision or move forward on anything. This is the beginning of conversation, not the culmination. We really need to hear from our people. So there will be more opportunity for us to get more information, more ideas of what our community wants. Then I will.
I had some more comments.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you. 2 comments. Number one, Mr. Hales, I won't allow Commissioner Hales to bring this home with her tonight. Okay, so you don't have to worry about but although my wife has somehow a built-in clock and she tooted me out after about 30 seconds. But I think what Mr. Hales brought forward is extremely important to recognize, and I agree with him. For instance, and I would mention this, the area of the county I live in, Topaz Ranch Estates, has very low property tax assessments and only generate about $350,000 a year for 26 miles of infrastructure that they are responsible for on repairs and maintenance on their roads. I did not move out there because of the roads. I moved out there because I wanted more rural, more land, less lighting, and low property taxes. And so I don't expect them. But it's interesting the number of people who do move into that area, knowing what they're buying and knowing what the roads were before they get there, and then all of a sudden saying, why aren't you repairing my roads? When they don't have the dollars and infrastructure. And what was very poignant that I understood when Mr. Nielsen made a presentation to a group a couple years ago, when he indicated that the town of Gardnerville has almost the same amount of roads as TRE, about 25 miles of roads, okay, and generates about 5 times the revenue that TRE generates, about $1.5 million a year. Okay, so I did remember what you said. I was listening. And yet, Mr. Nielsen, as the town manager, also recognizes that 1.5 million is still not enough to do their repairs and maintenance. Is that accurate? Okay. So you have to come to that understanding of what you're buying, where you're moving, what you're looking for, and the lifestyle that you expect. And so I wanted to thank you for bringing our attention to that, Mr. Hales. And once again, I won't let her take this home with me.
All right, thank you. Then we will go to public comment over any matters not on the agenda over which this board has jurisdiction. Seeing none, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.